actually makes him look like he's got some proverbial egg on his face. He should have kept quiet and said, all right, we're investigating. We want to find out exactly what happened. But you don't speak with some kind of authority and then a couple of weeks later we find out that indeed it wasn't the case. And the questions are coming up now. Was it a cover-up? And did he have something to do with it? Did the office have something to do with it?
Consider the option that there's something about the case that he may know that we didn't know. And because he knew something we didn't know, he made the comment. Remember, it isn't the first time the DP has weighed in on an issue that has touched on some legality. When we had the issue of the 2 dams,
yes,
as the comment that was published in the papers was the comment on, but it was 7 billion as opposed to as opposed to, well, without any cents added to it.
Yes.
Not that it's a puny amount that shouldn't be considered. It was only 7 billion. Now, that was against a backdrop of information that multiples of sevens of billions had actually been involved in this particular year. So, and it isn't the only comment. The one thing that characterizes the DP, anytime there is something that touches on him, he will retort back.
He's very quick to defend himself.
Yes, it is either why him in one form or the other, but it boils down to why him. And then there are comments that he will make. This is periodical, that there are individuals who seem to be anti-development. We are going to continue with development. It's a constant statement. He speaks along those lines repeatedly. So even when one could argue there's nothing that has actually been directed at him personally, he will respond.
Exactly.
Yes. Now, just like a response can, a statement can elicit a response can also elicit another response. But more importantly, any words that have been uttered, even when you explain it now, they'll be contextualized and it's something that you will be characterized with.
That's why anyone, I mean, apart from just the DP, when something like this pops up, you want to be very careful about the initial statements that you make, because the first impressions are the lasting ones. The first statement you make is the one that's going to be remembered. Anything else that he would have said about this case, the only thing that people remember is that, you said that these people were only in the office for 23 minutes. So what could they possibly have done?
But he is insisting that his timelines are correct. This is according
against
to
evidence?
a statement. Yes, this is according to the evidence that he says he has. In his statement released yesterday, his chief of staff, Ken Osinde, said the CCTV footage extracted from Harambe House Annex showed Echesa, a former sports cabinet secretary, in the office between 9:38:29 and 10:02:37.
Poof. Well, somebody didn't give him something. DCI Kinoti says that Sergeant Kene was directly involved in the fake arms deal racket that happened in the DP's office. And it will continue to unfold. We see that there are many details that are yet to be pieced together. But I also see that DCI George Kinoti is not letting this one go. We thought that it had gone silent for some time, but the investigations continued. And this one, he seems to be the one paying for blood here and said, but look, this one, we're not letting it go.
Let me read a quotation that is attributed to the DCI boss. The motives of cold murder is very clear. Opening statement. It was simply to safeguard, protect, insulate, and or save the source from adverse involvement in the attendant consequences of using the country's military procurement process in the most deceitful and fraudulent manner. Can you get any clearer?
Oh, no. The man knows what he's after, and it seems like he's not going to rest until he gets answers. And he wants to not just throw people under the bus in this case, but make sure that they pay.
Remember, he is the DCI boss. It's not as though he physically did the investigations.
No, his officers did.
But by the time he comes out with such a bold statement,
he's weighing in on this thing.
He knows what he is saying. He knows what he has seen. And then he knows things we don't know.
Absolutely. I'm sure. I mean, with all of this, we know in these cases that he has other information that we are not privy to.
And
so by the time he's making this statement, it seems pretty solid.
If this matter goes to court, some of these things that we haven't heard of, we may be able to hear or we may be able to learn.
Right.
But until then, let's continue reading and finding out what actually happened to this unfortunate gentleman who was found dead in his house.
All right. Men behaving badly on the front page of the Standard. 9 in 10 women get sexual harassment calls. A survey by the caller identification app Truecaller reveals an overwhelming majority of Kenyan women are inundated with lewd messages and dirty phone calls from strangers. Why they pick up the phone from numbers that they don't know is another question. But okay, if we look into the story a little deeper, it's that a survey was done, right? And it reveals that women in Nairobi, Mombasa, Kiambu and Nakuru receive the most nuisance calls. The survey was carried out by Truecaller between November 22nd and February 24th. And it shows that 1 in 5 women in Nairobi receive calls of a sexual and an inappropriate manner or nature. 47% of the sexual harassment calls and texts are traced to inmates in the country's prisons, with the remaining 53% coming from unknown people and stalkers.
Okay, the inmate story has been with us for some time.
Some time it has.
And you get to a point where you feel anytime someone doesn't want to go beyond what is known or probably talk about something that may make people uncomfortable related to inmates. Because they're faceless.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're not going to point, you don't know who they are.
But the comment that caught my attention is reported by a certain business lady. Says, how can someone just call you out of the blue and start telling you how they've been liking you, how they really want to meet you, and yet you have no idea who this person is? It is a fair comment, but it's besides the point. They know you.
Yes, they know you.
Yes, you don't need to know them. They know you and they have your number. And it is very easy to get your number.
Or even if they don't know you, they still know that, one, if anything, you're a woman, you're of a certain age, and that they can start speaking to you. They may not know you personally, but...
no, they know you as a target.
Right.
And they know you're female. Look, how often do you receive on your email advertisements, promises for training, also and you wonder, who on earth are these people?
How do they have my email?
It is not difficult to get a number. It's also not difficult to get details. That's why security around information has been the source of such huge conversation. Yes. And people who are behind it, like Facebook, all these platforms that use social media, they've been taken to task about this very, very issue, privacy. How do you guarantee privacy? How do you ensure that people benefit from this? This is a discussion that has been ongoing and it continues to be ongoing. Exactly. In fact, this morning I was listening to BBI and BBC rather, not BBI. BBI.
The whole country is listening to BBI.
BBC.
It's okay.
Yes, and Twitter say they are about to unveil a new app that allows you to self-correct and even self-delete information that you feel is not appropriate. And the reason is because of the rising numbers of people who are facing judicial situations simply because they have acted inappropriately. Yes. And so cases like this would be able to, to be mitigated against. But again, remember, in this country, very many people have been taken to court.
Yeah.
Because of these matters surrounding social media. Not just direct calls, social media.
Social media.
Yes.
You might or might not like this, but in the same Standard, bank CEOs bought freedom in the NYS scandal. We'll look at that. We're going to take a break and look at the weather. But it'll be interesting to know that the NYS scandal, the money has been paid. And it seems to be okay. It's out in the open. No one is hiding it. And how banks will be able to go scot-free and not face any kind of libelous charges.
Spice FM, Nakuru. "24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Once again, it's time to run. The Beyond Zero Half Marathon 2020 takes place on the 8th of March at Nyayo Stadium. Come and run with us. Run for better healthcare, for all Kenyans. Registration is only 2,000 shillings for amateurs, 2,500 shillings for elites. Register now at beyond0.or.ke. All Nairobi Sports House branches countrywide.
Highs of 28 and lows of 16 today. In Nyeri at 14 degrees, partly cloudy as well. Highs of 27 and lows of 14. Malindi, a warm day already. Partly cloudy conditions at 28 degrees. We're going to see highs of 33. Mombasa experiencing highs of 33 and lows of 27 today, and mostly cloudy conditions. In Nakuru, partly cloudy conditions, a chance of rain later, but clear skies right now. In Kisumu at 19 degrees, and going up to a high of 31 and a low of 21 today. We're going to have clear skies. In Eldoret, clear skies with a few clouds here and there, standing at 13 degrees. We're going to see a high of 26. Taking a look into the East African region right now, in Kampala at 21 degrees, partly cloudy conditions, a chance of rain with highs of 27 and lows of 21. In Dar es Salaam, rain expected later at highs of 33, standing strong at 26 right now and partly cloudy conditions. We'll take a look into Johannesburg. Down in the south of the continent, currently at 14 degrees, clear skies, and will come in later with highs of 24 and lows of 11. In Lagos, 28 degrees, thunderstorms expected later with highs of 34 and lows of 26. Into New York before we come down to Europe at 6 degrees, clear skies through the day, partly cloudy conditions to follow with highs of 11 and lows of 4. In Paris, it's a rainy morning at 6 degrees, cloudy conditions to ensue through the whole day with highs of 9 and lows of 3. And finally, in London, mostly cloudy conditions at 5 degrees, highs of 10 and lows of 2.
Spice FM. Spice up your life.
Maybe we want to do that as a topic.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
We're taking a look at what's going on in the papers.
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The reports that have come out, how bank CEOs bought freedom in an NYS scandal. This is in the Standard today. The 5 financial institutions also agreed to implement several corrective measures. Officials were to face criminal prosecutions after failing to report suspicious transactions by suspects through their institutions. So CEOs of 5 local banks have escaped prosecution over their role in the multi-million shilling National Youth Service scandal after paying 385 million, and this is collective. The money was deposited into a prosecution fund after the CEOs of KCB Group, Equity Bank Kenya, Standard Chartered, Diamond Bank and Cooperative Bank struck a deal with the Director of Public Prosecutions, Nurdin Haji, in an arrangement referred to as the Deferred Prosecution Agreement. It's a voluntary alternative to adjudication in which a prosecutor agrees to grant amnesty in exchange for the defendant agreeing to fulfill certain requirements. But the star of these requirements, obviously, was, to pay a certain amount of money. And basically, you forfeit then, or rather, then you would not be held to any kind of prosecution. Each of the banks, according to Haji, through their legal representatives, wrote to us requesting to cooperate and resolve the matters in lieu of prosecution. So, in this case, money has spoken. CT.
Yes, but the Central Bank of Kenya inspected these very banks and discovered that apart from just administrative lapses, because this is what they're claiming, the administrative lapses, money came in, we're not very certain about it. But they say that in the internal anti-modeling,
Okay.
It's Friday, is it?
It is Friday.
Money
Today's Friday.
laundering controls, they were also found to be criminally culpable. Yes, due to the violation of Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act.
Right.
Meaning, they were found to be guilty. I recall vividly when we had the DPP in the studio, he said that, yes, even when you arrive at such arrangements, remember, this isn't now a civil issue, it's criminal according to what the CBK You have an act, you have a law, and you've gone against it. Okay. Yes, you can have an out of court settlement. Yes, you can. It's called a deferred prosecution agreement. All right, DPA, understandable. But he said it wasn't just a question of fine or monies being paid. Time would need to also be. But I guess the issue of time being served here, the issue of the court cases didn't even get started.
They haven't started.
But according to this, they're not going to start. They've arrived at an understanding.
This is the specific cases for these banks
Yes,
and their
yes,
responsibility and culpability
yes,
as far as this is concerned.
Yes, meaning instead of seeing all these CEOs in the dock explaining how this happened, that has been deferred. Deferred prosecution agreement. That's what it's called. So they are not going to go to court.
Yes.
And they are not going to be prosecuted. Now, I'm not baying for blood.
But somebody's got to pay. I can see it. I can pull the next words out of your mouth.
Yes, what was I going to say next?
You're not baying for blood, but somebody should be able to pay beyond just doling out the dollar and saying, here is the money, essentially. Because like I said, the star of the agreement is the money that you're then able to pay back. There are other requirements, but this is the main thing that comes through.
All these corruption cases that we speak of, all these monies that we lose in government, it's not as though someone goes to the central bank and walks out with a truckload of money. No, they don't. These monies pass through our banks.
Yep.
Whichever bank it is, they pass through our banks. And you cannot tell me that banks do not have a clear understanding of amounts that go through their banks, why they go through where they come from. They do understand all these things. Yes, there can be the human element of error, understandably, but they do know. And these are cases that have been highlighted. What else? Banks around the world, when this issue of terrorism and banking came in, closed huge banking conglomerates. Okay? And they closed down simply because it was considered that a lot of the activities had to do with money that couldn't fully be explained. 1, 2, the origin of where these monies came from happened to also be origins of places which were directly related to banks. Huge banking conglomerates closed because of this. Why? They were found to be conduits. Banks have not stopped being conduits. We've had discussions about safe havens where people take their money. It isn't someone's bedroom and it's not under a mattress. It is banks. So even when the CBK talks about tightening these controls, I have to go to the CBK because it's also a bank.
Yes, it is.
What do they do and what is it that they can do to show up our confidence that indeed they are playing the role of the watchdog and ensuring that some of these things that are not supposed to be done by banks are not done.
Are done.
Yes, because these cases that we're talking about and the amount of money that you're talking about, you see, I have been conditioned where when you talk about a few 100 million shillings, which is a great deal of money, I feel like you're talking about a small change.
Yeah, only.
Yes.
That's the thing, only.
Yes. And
because of what we've seen.
And from banks that make billions, I feel that even when they talk about legislation and amending it, they should have some really prohibitive fines that they levy against institutions that seem to tend this way. Right. Meaning, this is a slap in the wrist. Slap. Because a gentle slap at that.
Whichever way you want to look at it or how it wants to be described, at the end of the day, these institutions allowed this to happen. If you want to go to as far as saying they actually facilitated some of these things to happen because you're the conduit through which then money will pass from one point to the other. You accepting of this money, if you didn't do the due diligence to ask questions as to when this money was moving through, you played a hand. You allowed, you facilitated. So yeah, a little bit more than a slap on the wrist is probably what's necessary to see that some kind of measures are put in place to that this doesn't happen again.
You see, the fines are based on the amount of money that were under dispute. And this was NYS money, remember? Okay? And it was a percentage. Like, for instance, Diamond Trust, what the fine they paid of 56 million was 34%. Co Bank paid 20 million, which was considered 7.6%. What I'm saying is, yes, if that is how the procedure is followed, understandably. But there should be a general fine for even having participated.
Exactly.
Forget the amounts in question. What other transactions are there that we are not talking about? Yes. It should be a deterrent, meaning we will fine you for whatever amount you let through. But because you have abrogated this understanding, we will make sure you never do it. You made this profit. Let your shareholders understand that the activities affect their being.
Their money.
You made 6 billion. We're taking half of it.
We're taking half of it. There you go.
Yes. And then see how believe me, they will behave so nicely. You will be amazed at how well behaved they are.
They are.
Because somehow they will know that the decisions you make that you think you can get away with, you won't. Because your shareholders will tell you, explain to us how you got
our money is. Essentially, how is our money missing?
Yes.
We made money and it cannot be in our hands or in our pockets. So you need to tell us what happened and where did it go?
They are saying that they want to now upgrade and ensure that they know your client compliance status and ensure proper supporting documents for customer transactions.
I'm sorry, but they could... No. The questions that are asked when you go with a smaller amount of money as an individual, they ask you, what is the source of this money?
Of course they ask you.
So you mean to tell me that if they do that with smaller amounts, they can't do this with these billions that are running through their coffers? This know your customer thing, maybe one of the requirements, but it's all...
But banks have been applying it.
They have been applying it. Yes. So why suddenly did this not come into play?
Look, if you give someone a check beyond a certain amount, they will call you to ask.
Did you actually issue this check?
Yes. Yeah. So banks have been doing it.
So it seems though then in this case that a blind eye was turned to us as to what was happening.
I am certain that what likely happened is it went up through the chain. These amounts were seen. Somebody says, this is beyond the threshold. It goes to the next level. Hey, this money is beyond the threshold. You know, banks actually do have systems which actually work.
They do.
Okay? And it keeps going up. So somewhere along the line, somewhere along that chain, somebody says it's okay, let it through. If one higher up says it's okay and they have the mandate to say such things, then you say it is okay. But remember, there is a fear, and I have to add this caveat. When you hear these things, it means the banks now are going to have leeway to actually even abuse the system. If someone doesn't like you, they'll flag that amount, even if it's money you have been receiving and they know it comes from. Essentially, e-person mingi sana. Too much money.
I'm not going to let you go away with it.
Yes. So, it's a pity that when you have a country where rules that are supposed to actually make things better
end up making things worse.
They can easily become a tool that makes people's lives unbearable.
Right. Police and judiciary on the spot as drug barons make Kenya a narcotics heaven. This is in the Daily Nation. Report blames security officials and courts for aiding and abetting outlawed trade. Kenya is a transit country for various illegal drugs, according to the U.S. State Department report. It has revealed Kenya's anti-narcotics unit conducted over 1,500 raids in the first 9 months of 2019, seizing over 56.8 kilograms of heroin, 7.9 metric tons of cannabis, 3.6 kilos of cocaine, and over $18 million in cash and property, according to a new report released by the United States Department of State. The International Narcotics Control Strategy Report of the Bureau for International Narcotics, okay, that's a mouthful, shows the raids and seizures were made possible through the use of modern surveillance techniques and forensics that saw significant investigations targeting police and judicial officials carried out last year. Washington blames the Kenyan courts for doing little to help in the fight against trade in narcotics, adding that it requires further improvements to effectively prosecute drug trafficking cases. Again, blaming the judiciary and the police for turning a blind eye to some of these things.
Is this not old news? What is new?
There's nothing new about this. We were very aware that, this is a transit point for drugs. And one more so used, and knowing that people do turn a blind eye or turn away.
There's something that perhaps isn't in the public domain, but if you talk to people who are in security, they will tell you that not only do they know, but they track these things.
Yeah, they're aware of who's coming in. They're even aware when they're coming in or leaving.
They even know who is involved. But again, when it's kicked up the ladder, there's a place at which it stops. And I'm saying it's really kicked up the ladder. Yes.
It really has.
Yes.
Until we have graphs and stuff, making it look a lot worse than it is. Okay, we're taking a look at what's happening in the news in Kenya and around the world. We'll be back in a bit. We want to take a look at what's going on for traffic. It's a Friday. See how busy things are. And we'll come back and continue with this. All right, start things off on Mombasa Road today. Namanga Road from Kitengela all the way through is not so bad, but then it starts right around GM, rather from the Gateway Mall and then down towards General Motors. Jogo Road has started all the way back from Hamza, moving very slowly, but it is moving right now. Waiyaki Way jam started at the 87. Then now further down, not much traffic till you get to the Westlands roundabout. It's snaking its way slowly into the city centre. On Mombasa Road from Survey to, on Thika Road rather, from Survey to Ngara, flowing freely on the highway. No traffic at this point. It's probably going to be a fabulous Friday. Nothing much else going on. It's slow though on the highway, but we'll be fine until things pick up, and when they pick up we'll let you know. Do let us know what you see. The southern and eastern bypass is open right now, not much of a problem. We saw some issues on the northern bypass yesterday, but we'll see what that looks like now. Remember that industrial area is likely to be a bit of a chock-a-block situation, so you want to plan your trips early. Let us know what you see. Spice FMKE on Twitter, or give us a call on 0719012600. Something we need to spread the word about so we can keep things moving. It's a Friday morning.
Chilled Spice. Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
What's happening in the news? And we want to look at a forecast now. Yatani moves to cut expenditure and increase revenues this financial year. He won't be the first. CS, Finance Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani has been made bold budget cuts in effort to force the government to live within its means. He won't be the first, but it might seem that in light of the fact that Kenya's economical outlook is looking rather dreary and grim at this point, it seems the only solution or the only way to go. In his first budget, the cabinet secretary appears to have reversed the trend of avaricious expenditure after he cut total spending for the first time in 5 years. For the first time in 5 years, we've seen cuts. Yatani reveals in the 2020 budget policy statement that he intends to present a 2.7 trillion shilling budget for the financial year that begins in July. This is a reduction of more than 120 billion shillings. The statement sets out the broad priorities and policy goals that guide the national and county governments in preparing their budgets for the financial year over the medium term. From the House, MPs agree with this financial statement. The executive will be required to work within the 1.78 trillion budget. Following the passing of a statement by the National Assembly, the executive had sought at least 2 trillion, but the Budget Appropriations Committee chairman Kimani Ichung'wah said MPs were guided by the ability to hit revenue targets, and instead we reiterate the importance of reviewing expenditure and targeting reduction in non-core areas.
Words.
These are words that we're throwing at this
words.
now. First time we see a budget cut in 5 years,
words.
And then saying, look, we're trying to increase revenues, and a lot of this has been placed on the Kenya Revenue Authority, of course, and we're looking at ordinary revenue to bring in 1.8 trillion, ministerial and appropriation in aid 277 billion, grants, foreign borrowing, domestic borrowing, and other domestic financing.
Words. Tell me, even when the budget is read, or when it's the content of the budget speech is actually published, do you ever get a clear understanding of the monies that are attributed to each and every ministry, how they are spent, whether it's all spent, and on what is spent, on what it's spending? Do you ever get that? No, you don't.
It's actually not clear. A lot of numbers are thrown at Kenyans.
Yes, I'm being specific here. Do we know then, at the end of every year, which ministry has had to return money? And of those monies, how much in total? I've heard it once or twice. Once or twice. In 2007, there was a mention of a 121 billion that had been unspent.
Yes.
Not long after that, we heard of something like 31 billion. I'm asking, on a yearly basis, do we know what remains unspent? the total sum of it, the ministries that have absorbed whatever was allocated to them and what remained? Do we know this? Why am I asking this? Because if you have this information, then it will be clear to you which ministries are able to absorb everything they have. It's all good and well to budget and put money aside for it. If money moves from one ministry to the other, following whatever processes that are legally allowed, do we have a clear understanding on a yearly basis? This is our money that they're spending on our behalf. We can't keep track of it because we don't even know how it is spent. We have an idea of what should be done. But the ministry that gives it out has the capacity to be able to inform the public with clarity how it is now. If you talk to us about budget cuts, it doesn't make much sense. It doesn't mean much.
It doesn't make much difference to
really.
Kenyans, really.
We have mini budgets. You'll tell us this is what we budgeted for. Then somewhere along the line, 3 months down the line, there'll be some other changes. So what exactly have you done? The budget cuts would make a lot more sense from a background of this understanding of how it is we burn the money that is allocated for each and every ministry and how much of it remains.
Is it in their interest to share with Kenyans?
Lastly, they should tell us what happens to that money which remains every year.
Does it go back and then comes...
Because money, go back where?
Well, is it within their interest to share this information with Kenyans generally, to say that
It's not
this
their
is a budget,
money.
this is a budget that we
I,
make.
as a taxpayer, am asking you to tell me what you do with my money. I'm not asking you to tell me what you do with your money. Remember, this is public money.
It is public money.
Yes, and everything about it should be public. That's why it's called public money.
Right.
Yes.
And you said how many times? What was that year you said? 2007, CT?
Yes.
It's the last time we heard that there was money that was allocated that was really not
2013,
spent.
there was also mention of it. Yes, if I may be, my memory is fuzzy on this, but I've heard it mentioned only twice. It can't be that when it was mentioned is the only time that you had monies that had not been spent. And this was from the report of the Auditor General.
It would be interesting to know of what benefit then is it to keep this information undercover.
No, the culture, if you know, within government is to give out as little information as possible. It's not written anywhere, but that's what they do.
Well, look, when you hold the information, you essentially hold the control. That's the thing.
Yes, but you also let loose speculation.
I've always said when there's a vacuum in terms of information and communication of something, you allow people then to say, just as you might be, alluding to now, that there's money that's left over when the financial year comes to a close.
There is always, let me state it categorically so that you understand.
And when you
not
don't tell
every
us,
ministry burns all
their money, absolutely. And
it.
when you don't tell us what happens with what is left over, we're only likely to speculate that it goes into people's pockets. Yes.
What concerns me is words being thrown at a problem, as though we are saying we need to be prudent in our spending and we need to be prudent in the management of our funds. How many times in the last year did we hear of over expenditure, government cutting back on things? Was anything cut? Travel, there was talk. Traveling by government officials was going to be cut. There was talk. There was talk of reducing flowers, tea. Those costs are irrelevant if you're looking at what it is that ails the economy. It isn't that people are drinking tea in the government offices that makes the economy go bad. Nothing of that sort. It isn't as though ministers' offices having flowers makes the economy go bad. They don't. The amounts of money used for these things are minuscule. Number one. Two, they are budgeted for.
They're budgeted for.
Yes.
Now, all of this taken into consideration, CT, Yatani has said we need to cut expenditure because the global outlook, according to this, the global outlook is that, it's not very good. The locust invasion has come and taken over, literally. And you have it being a threat to food security in the country. Okay, that's just one.
Stop.
Wait now, CT.
What is Yatani telling us that we haven't heard before? Go forward and tell me what he hopes to do in order to achieve these things.
And he has told you now he wants to budget cuts. Is that what
we've heard that before,
right? And then increased revenue sources.
We've heard that before. It's called taxing. We're seeing it going on.
And we see the majority of it will come from
tax. And we hear the complaints. Carry on.
And now this is what he has told us, that this is what they hope to do. Yes, so I would say that at this point we're just hearing words.
What
we're not
is new?
Anything fantastic
every budget
coming
cycle,
out of this.
Every budget cycle with whoever minister is in charge, they will read out. And in order to raise money to facilitate this budget, we are going to cut taxes on cigarettes but increase it on alcohol. We are going to increase taxes on maize meal because everybody eats ugali, but we are going to reduce it on tractors. this is something we hear every year when the Minister for Finance
is preparing a budget. All right. In this case, though, it still poses a problem because just a month ago, the CBK governors talked about the fact that things look a bit dismal on the global scene.
They are dismal. They're not looking.
But we're going to be all right. Here, a month later, it's coming out of the Treasury that actually, you know what? It actually is not looking very good. It really isn't looking very good with all that we have being thrown at us. Tensions between the United States and Iran expected to keep, oil prices high. Oil prices are high, meaning that you're going to have to pay more for your daily needs here and there. So this is what we see. We'll probably look at this in a little bit more detail as we go along, but that is what we're faced with now. The economy not looking very good. The government's purse will be tightened, and that means that the common man once again is the one who is going to have to suffer it.
That's words. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right. What else do you have, CT, as we continue looking at what is making headlines today?
What you need to understand is that the issue of impeachment seems to have caught fire. Remember, we do have a gentleman from Vihiga County called Mr. Wilbur Otichilo. Mm-hmm. There is a move to impeach him.
What did he do?
What do they do?
Generally, mismanagement of office.
It's what they're accused of. It's not what they've done. Remember, there's a threshold that must be reached to determine that these accusations actually have some water, have some ground. Now, this one of his is still at the discussion phase where the MCA is opposed to him. There are those who are for him. And it looks like the pro-governor MCAs have been kicked out of committees. Mm-hmm. So this fight is still going on. The committee or the MCAs, the assembly hasn't arrived at an agreement. In Kiambu, they seem to have arrived at a certain understanding. Nairobi, the discussion is still ongoing. Vihiga has also joined the queue. But more importantly, one sees one Gideon Moi is in the papers more and more doing the rounds around the country and making political statements.
Yeah.
Yes.
Rift Valley belongs to all Kenyans, is what he says.
Yes, he does.
He says the Uhuru Raila initiative should be used to address problems facing the people. He was speaking at Kabarak yesterday where he held talks with delegates from CIA led by Mr. Asanga. Gideon said as leaders, they should be selfless and always focusing on assisting the people. It sounds very flowery, and it seems that he might be one out of many who wants to stand up and talk about, unification and cohesion and making sure that this is for all. So we should all be ready to develop so that everybody then can, enjoy the proceeds of our development and unification and cohesion. Yeah.
Yes, I like the way it's been put. Should. But what is of importance, and this is what is significant, as long as President Moi, former President, was alive, there were always delegations that met him at Kabarak. Mm-hmm. Change of guard, delegations are going to Kabarak to meet Mr. Gideon Moi. Yes. It speaks volumes. It speaks volumes, and he continues using the same thread. We are resolute on BBI, and we want to see the baby born. We don't want a stillbirth. We will unite and assist each other. We shall be friends together, especially in this journey. They continue. You don't have to worry, just like it is in a market. With BBI, we will have had so many mad men and women who will try to move in the opposite direction. Some people have closed their eyes as we move forward. And this is according to KANU Secretary General Nick Salat, who was also at this meeting. So what is being emphasized here, there was Daniel Arap Moi, now there's Gideon Moi. Yes, so carrying through the tradition. Yes, exactly. So if you want to talk about the power structure is now represented by Gideon Moi. Yes, so the dawn of a new day has burst. Yes, it has. We'll take a break. We'll be back in a bit and continue looking at what's making headlines today.
spice up your life. 87.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
Yeah. You're listening to Spice FM.
Morning's done right here in the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Before we get into the thick of things, still looking at what is taking place in the country and around the world as we go through the headlines today.
Nairobi County. Two officials, both in the finance department, have defied sacking orders. One of them, the chief finance chief officer, a gentleman by the name of Washington Makodingo, categorically stated that his contract expired in 2022. And since he was appointed the previous year, he has had no notification and no process that would warrant his sacking legal has been carried through. So as far as concerned, he is still in the job. Now, it is quoted that the finance executive, Pauline Kahiga, is saying that if, as it's being stated, she has been sacked, how is it then that she is still making payments? Meaning they have stayed put. The drama in the counties continue. Remember this against a backdrop of the finance department within Kisumu County having burnt to the ground.
To the ground.
Literally to the ground. Yes. A little archaic, but remember, how is it that only departments that carry crucial information seem to catch fire in the counties?
Yes, you want to throw that out there now and
Yes,
say,
exactly.
how
I'm
is it
saying
that
so
this happens?
because
And we've had a line of fires,
We
pardon
do.
the pun, but
Yes.
yes, that has been the case. From county to county,
Yes.
Migori to Kisumu to Kakamega, there
Homa
have been
Bay.
fires, Homa Bay, and there have been fires in specific departments for which records then were required to answer certain questions, and then poof, up
But
in
we've
flames.
also had the same problem with universities. Maseno University had a similar problem. It's like the entire admin facility went down. Now, see, unlike the county offices, they lost no information. What I mean is, because of the IFMIS, it doesn't matter what you do to the files. Because individuals who do business with the county system are registered in IFMIS.
Their information is locked.
Yes, it's ICT. It's there. And all those details, there are copies of them somewhere else. So it's just an inconvenience. But when you go to universities that probably haven't gone fully ICT, when that department burns down, remember, you are talking about student records. You're talking about marks. You're talking about debt. You're talking about the operational arm of the university. Believe me, it takes a long time for those things to be sorted out.
It does.
And Maseno had the same problem. So the fires moved from our secondary schools, where they were rife in boarding schools,
To county offices.
Yes, exactly. And we've had, anyway. But that is a situation that we are in.
Cause for concern, and a
Counties,
little bit more speculation.
one could argue that the county problems are beginning to catch fire.
There you go.
Yes.
Good job, CT. 1 dead, 11 hurt in border fight. The governor urges government to move with speed to manage the situation to avoid more loss of lives. This is what is happening, where one person died and 11 injured at the Mandera County Hospital following Monday's confrontation between the federal governments of the Somalia Army and Jubaland forces. The clashes at the main border happened as the Somali troops pressed for the release of Jubaland Minister Abdirashid Hassan Abdinur, alias Abdirashid Janan, who is said to be in Mandera. Janan reportedly arrived in Mandera on the 30th of January and was booked into a local hotel after he escaped from a Mogadishu prison where he had been held since August 31st, 2019. Communication was cut in Mandera town for the better part of Monday because of the clashes in Bulahawa town, located a few kilometers from Kenya. The conflict continues. In the studio today after 7 o'clock, we're going to have former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Farah Halim, and Maliman will be talking about a lot of what has been happening, the simmering tensions between Somalia and Kenya. We heard President Uhuru Kenyatta early on in this week saying, don't don't provoke us. We've helped with Somalia. We've helped with the setup of this buffer government for the Jubaland forces. The Jubaland forces, yes, or the Jubaland government. We've helped with this, and we've created a safe zone over time. So now you wanting to poke the bear, you really don't want to do that. But
this has been going on for the longest
time. And there are many things going on, from the maritime wars to the boundary redrawing at the ICJ. A lot of elements playing in here. But then now with the clashes that we see on this border town of Mandera, it doesn't look too pretty. We see that Uhuru Kenyatta, the president rather, chaired a special session of the National Security Council to discuss the onslaught on Kenya's territorial integrity and the sovereignty by Somalia.
Bear in mind, this is what you see happening here. You have a situation where prior to some sort of settlement and understanding of the animosities that existed in Somaliland, when structures of government came into being, the Federal Republic of Somaliland, which has its president, you have Jubaland, and you have other entities where people claim to be the leaders. Essentially, you have a ragtag federal system. Okay. Now, Kenya, admittedly, and in their own voice, helped set up this government of Jubaland.
Yes.
You will understand that a lot of the problems you find in many of the borders that we have nothing to do with country to country. These borders were enacted by colonialists, and it cut through communities. And these communities had their tradition. When you find a country that has one language, the issue you're going to find is not tribalism, it's clanism.
It's clanism, sure.
Yes. And you'll find this in the Pokot area, Pokot in Uganda, Pokot in Kenya. They have arrived at some peace and have understood. You've had forward-looking governors who have ensured that you bring young people together from all these warring communities so they grow up understanding that they can work with each other. But when you have a situation like the one we have in northern Kenya, where you'll find that the clans that inhabit the areas of Mandera and the ones that inhabit the areas of around Garissa, these aren't clans that have gotten along very well. And remember, they are in Kenya, yes, as Kenyans, but they are also in Somalia. So if these clans disagree in Somalia, that fight is going to come back to Kenya.
Sure, but unfortunately, some of the could be unintended, or in this case, intended results of these clashes then play on Jubaland, which was a buffer territory for that set up by the Kenya government. So when they are attacked, it makes Somalia look like an ungrateful neighbor in terms of all that has been done.
It's a little trickier than that.
Well, I mean, this is what Kenya has said. This is the sentiment that has been put out. This is sentiment. City, this is the sentiment that has been put out. That of all the work that we have done to try and put it to coming from the president himself, saying that we have done a lot to try and maintain peace and order. So when these clashes have come out, whether they are between clans and they spill over here, and then some of the results then attack this buffer zone that we've been able to create, what it looks like is actually you have no regard for the work that we've done in this region.
Consider
and that is where the simmering tensions are coming from.
This is us saying we have done work. Do they recognize it as work?
Who, Somalia?
Yes.
This is the problem.
Do they recognize it as something that helps them?
And that is the bone of contention.
If they don't, then our actions have been in vain.
But look at a lot of when you have simmering tensions between two nations around the world, it is because of the fact that one has not paid recognition of the work that somebody else may have done.
And why must they? This is the problem. This is a question they would ask. Why must they?
Well, when they were having the negotiations and when they came in and talked and had these bilateral relations over and over again, there seemed to be an understanding or an acceptance of this at that time. Famajo, Uhuru Kenyatta, back and forth. This was the case. That, all right, we're trying to help here. And it seems that in this area...
What are we discussing? Territorial sovereignty, or are we discussing oil?
Well, if you want to talk about the redrawing
If
we want to talk about the redrawing of the boundary, which is a case at the ICJ right now, withdrawing of the boundary so that one country then has this, it's 100 kilometers square of land, which is said to be rich in oil and gas deposits. That's the bone of contention between Somalia and Kenya right now. Or rather, one of the bones.
Is it really a bone of contention?
One of the bones of contention. I mean, you have a piece of land that could be potentially huge in economic resources for one country, and another country saying it essentially belongs to them.
You know,
the majority of the conflicts around the world have been based on resources, City.
There is, yes, they have. There was a president in Uganda called Idi Amin who claimed that the territory of Uganda began at Naivasha. Yes.
Yeah. It's a bit humorous, but all right.
It's no less humorous than this claim that a certain portion, because
But
where are
But
you
you
going
must
to-
understand that both countries are making the claim, CT. It's not one side. Somalia says it belongs to them. Kenya says it belongs. In fact, it was by Kenya, it was laughable. And this case was supposed to be before the ICJ in September last year. Kenya said, okay, that's very nice, but we don't actually have time to deal with this thing right now. We're not having a contention of whether this land is ours or yours. We know it belongs to us. So you know what? Give us a few months, because we have other things that we're dealing with. ICJ says, all right, we'll talk about it in June 2020. So Kenya has dismissed it as a bone of contention, even because they see that, you know what are we talking about? Something that has been ours all the time. Somalia comes out of the woodwork and says, you know what, actually, this does belong to us. And we're not just contending it. We are going as far as saying that there should be a redrawing of boundaries and return to us what was originally ours historically.
If you go to the areas of Turkana, that part, not northeastern, just north, if you look at some older maps, it wasn't an sort of an almost even line. It was a spike like a pyre.
It was jagged.
Upward. The Islamic Triangle, as it used to be called. For the longest time, there was that debate. It has since been quelled with Southern Sudan becoming independent. The boundaries that were drawn with the... if you are talking about colonial boundaries, to set them right, then you are going to have to look at many other things that were drawn in colonial times, including the treaty regarding the Nile, including territories of the entire continent. That's the debate that you've opened up.
Yeah.
All right? Now, if you open that debate, then what you've actually done is that you are now opening a debate for secession, so that the people of Northeastern Province, and this came up at independence during what we referred to as the Shifter Wars, okay? Then you'd go to that northwestern part of the country, and the Pokot would say we'd either rather be in Kenya or Uganda. You go to Western Kenya, the Samia will say that actually, we actually prefer to be wherever it is. You go to the southeastern part of the country, you'll find there are Maasai, you'll find there are the Kuria on both sides of the so-called border. Where will you start? You go to Digo land at the coast. You'll find there are Digos across the border in Tanzania. Where are you going to start this discussion, and where are you going to end it?
You wouldn't have been the first to bring it up, and we would deceive ourselves if we say that this is not the sentiment that is rife among the minds of many, many people when we look at conflicts like this that continue to take place over time. Because what we're talking about, these clashes didn't start yesterday. These are things that you can trace back to easily 2-3 decades ago. Ever since the boundary was made, from the very beginning, these clashes have been taking place. And so people say, you know what, we've clashed so often that we get to the point where we're tired of it. So we need to make a decision. Are we going to redraw this thing, or are we going to continue fighting? And this sentiment that you've made, CT, is what is in the minds of a lot of people, whether expressed or not. And they're saying, you know what, at some point we see that cessation comes into play. It comes in. And that is why then you have leaders who are making these broad statements about we need to settle this thing before it gets to a point where we have groups of people saying then they want to go ahead and form their own country.
This fight, this what is being reported, it is even reported correctly. Jubaland forces and the Somali federal government forces had a tiff. There was a leader who had been arrested, had been Mogadishu, escaped from jail, he came to Kenya. A fight that was outside our country came into our country, and they continued fighting within our borders. They were not fighting us.
But fighting within your borders. But are you going to keep quiet? You're sitting in your, of course, CT, you're sitting in your home, and somebody comes into your compound and begins to fight.
Because I'm looking at the details of this situation.
Okay, I think we're going to take some 10 minutes before Farah Malim joins us right after 7 and look a little bit more into this. Right now, we want to take a look at traffic. Coming to the top of the hour, has been looking at what is making headlines. This is Kenya's biggest conversation in the Situation Room this morning. Tensions are simmering already. Right around 7 o'clock, we'll take a look at the roads and what's happening with traffic, and we'll be back as we open up this discussion. Traffic on Thika Road today started as far back as the Garden City. Not so bad, but you can use the Babadogo route, which is an alternative, and see how that is, then trying to get in and out of the city centre. Mombasa Road, yes, started as far back as Cabanas, even further back as the Gateway Mall today, route around Sioki Mall. It's moving, albeit slowly, but it's moving anyway. Ngong Road towards Dagoretti Corner, that's inbound, is looking good. Outbound towards the City Mortuary roundabout is not so bad either. Westlands, easy street today. A little bit of traffic, but only what can be expected at this time. Where we're going to have some problems today, folks, is in the industrial area right around Likoni Road, Enterprise Road, A and B. It seems like it's going to be a bit of a mess. We know that some roads will be closed Saturday, Sunday, as there's some construction taking place, and that could spill over to Monday as well. So you want to plan your trips early. I'm giving you good and ample warning for the week that is coming ahead. Apart from that, not much, unless you see something that we should know about. You can use the southern and eastern bypasses in and outbound to Mombasa Road and Thika Road. Kiambu Road is likely to serve up some vibes in a bit, but we'll make sure we let you know about that. If you can avoid it now, it's the time to do so. Spice FMKE, give us a shout on Twitter or give us a call. Let us know what you see.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news
The only
hound,
way to
a
start your
man
day. This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. The live streams are up and you can hear us and watch us on Spice FM KE on YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. You tuned in to us in Nairobi, Mombasa, Eldoret, and around the country. This morning, we in the studio today with C.T. Muga and myself, Nduoko. We're having discussions now centered around the simmering tensions between Somalia and Kenya. The president, Uhuru Kenyatta, had something to say about, really don't provoke. In this case, don't poke this national and sovereign bear when it comes to these clashes that we see taking place. We're going to be joined in the studio in a few minutes by Farah Malim, who is the former deputy speaker of the National Assembly. And we're going to look at these tensions and see what it does mean. But City, as we were coming off of this previously, looking at the fact that, the tensions are taking place. Somebody brings a conflict into your home. You're not going to sit back and watch as this unfolds. You're going to have something to say about all of this. You're going to have to make a sentiment.
I wasn't suggesting you don't say a thing. I was having a different discussion. I was saying you cannot solve a problem successfully if you don't actually understand what it really is. Somebody crosses our border, even if they bring a fight, they are actually interfering with our sovereignty. Not only do we have any right to complain, we have every right to take our military to that part of the world and to start ensuring the safety of our people. That we do. We have a right. It's actually an invasion. You brought a fight into the country, you have invaded. And by so doing, what you are doing, you're just one hop away from an act of war. Just one hop away.
Yeah.
And our military forces did go to that particular area. All right. There are many situations in the world where a problem that begins in one part of another nation spills over. You do remember that World War I and how it began. You are talking about the Archduke Ferdinand who was murdered. The problems were not even there. The problems were far away, far away in Eastern Europe, far away. And they hadn't occurred around the time the Duke was being murdered. Though it is claimed that the person who perpetrated the actual act came from that far Eastern European country. The point is this, you cannot think about a long-term solution if you don't understand the depth of the problem that we're dealing with when two parties within a particular country cross over. There's depth to this. The normal clan warfare that we had, when a state becomes a state, so to speak, whether others agree with it or not, you know why? They're now open to negotiations with other countries. Whereas you had a ragtag outfit with a few people armed, you now have people who are seriously armed, simply because they can claim statehood, and with that they can claim resources, and with that they can claim all sorts of things and are able to do things that ordinarily, as a small clan, they couldn't. Now, the war in Somalia has raged on from the time Said Barre was deposed. It's only now we have a semblance of even governments coming in. Within Somalia themselves, within Somalia, even that federal state of Somaliland, they have issues that are still unresolved.
Now, here's the thing. If you want to look on the side of Somalia in all of this and the sentiments that have been made by Uhuru Kenyatta and said, don't mess around with this, because you want to make sure that the simmering tensions have kind of been held at bay over time. It hasn't been an issue. But with what we have seen recently, this could get out of hand. Now, in most cases where you have a state of war is because one side actually doesn't recognize or doesn't regard the sovereignty of another state. One. Two, doesn't actually recognize what it is what we're talking about, when we say that, you're poking the bear. So because there is no regard or recognition, that is when you see that the fight then ensues. And I'm saying on this part, Somalia or the forces, the national forces, are really looking at their own day. Kenya doesn't come into regard, except these other issues that we see that compound the problem with the ICJ and the maritime war that has been happening over the last few months, where all of these other things come into play. I'm saying these things then now all add on to the other to add some temperature to these already simmering tensions that we see. This is the problem. And all of it now is put together because you say, I know we've had a problem for some time. The border clashes have been going on. The clan wars have been happening, which you basically brought into our living room. But you know what? Apart from that, there's 1, 2, 3 and the other. And if something is going to come in that is going to throw in a match on an already petrol infused surface, we're not going to allow that to happen. So everything that is added on to this it makes it even worse. It doesn't mean that these clashes are not the only issue. And yes, Kenya is demanding of Somalia at this point that you need to recognize the efforts that we have made to keep peace in this region, to make sure that you are okay, to make sure that we were able to set up this zone for the Jubaland forces.
And if they refuse to acknowledge it, then?
That's what I'm talking about. The refusal of acknowledgement in most cases is the incendiary match, right? That then makes things worse. And that's what we're looking at potentially now.
Is it a refusal of acknowledgement or simply taking a position that suits you best? Because to acknowledge the help is to acknowledge other things as well.
They did previously, though. I mean, it's not the first.
Who in particular led that understanding? Remember, there have been changes. There's a point I'm trying to make here. We have people who have families within Kenya who even hold government jobs. Some have even been members of parliament in neighboring countries. We have people in Kenya whose origin and background is Somali. They live in Kenya. They hold political positions. They hold high government officials. What you need to be asking yourself is, where is the allegiance? Is it to the country? Is it to the clan? Is it to the general community?
Well, of
course, that is the question.
Yeah, and but it's hierarchical. It can't just only be one, CT.
No. To answer that question, I'm taking this discussion further. When you look at other Kenyans who are in this country, who hold same positions of authority from the community, who is the allegiance to? To the community they come from? To the clan they come from? Or to the government of Kenya? And I'm saying this is something you want to ask of all Kenyans, not just Kenyans of supposed Somali origin. No, all.
I don't think there's one answer. I don't think there's one. You can't say that my allegiance only is to my clan. My allegiance only is to my community. My allegiance only is to my country. And I think this bears some kind of hierarchical structure whereby, yes, it could be first to my clan and then on a greater to my community. And then after that, greater to my country.
One of the biggest complaints that has come to the media more often than you care to think of is the dominance of a particular community in parastatal jobs, government jobs. Anything that is dished out, it has been claimed, and lists have been produced. Look at this ministry. Look at these numbers. And the argument has been, well, if they are populous and they are many, representatively speaking, you will find them in many places. Now, that has been the argument. And so the other question has been asked, so are you saying that there aren't other Kenyans who are equally competent to do these jobs except from this community? It's a debate that has gone on. I am asking this question in the larger sense because if today, I'm talking about myself, I had a job, I would consider the job, yes, but I would consider looking after the interest of my people first. That is the truth.
Of course. In a situation then when the country is held then at ransom, then at some point your allegiance to your country comes into play, and that's what I'm saying. This allegiance that we're talking about comes into play at different times depending on the situation, depending on the situation that you're faced with immediately, depending on something that could come in the future or something that could come at large. You can't just say that your allegiance is born to your community only forever.
Do you know why
it's not an everlasting
status. Do you know why
status,
county
CT.
governments make sense? It takes care of that need that we have. So you have your own county, your own people, and you can benefit your people directly. My view, of course.
Of course.
Let's welcome our guest.
We're in the studio this morning. Farah Malim has joined us. Farah, good morning, is the former Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly. We're glad to have you in the studio today. Karibu Sana. Once again, you're with us to talk about issues that we see. Many words have been used, and we're going to jump right into it because we're in the middle of it right now. Border tensions. So many things have happened over the last few days. Expressions by the president in terms of, don't provoke between Somalia and Kenya. Don't provoke. And then we see 11 MPs making a trip to Somalia over the weekend. Let's start at the very beginning. What is the problem when it comes to the tensions that we see?
The problem is in twofold. First, about 8 years ago, we made a unilateral decision without any protocol in any way underlining it, and committed our forces to Somalia. We did not do it at the instigation of AU. We did not do it as a UN resolution. We were not invited by the government of the day in Somalia. We made a unilateral decision and walked into Somalia, a region of Somalia called Jubaland. We then planted our own person, puppet, to be the president of that Jubaland. Now, over a period of time, the center was not holding. You see, this has not been just here. It had been replicated in a number of other places by Ethiopia also. They created six different states, and each one of them with a direct allegiance to a country in the neighborhood and not to the center in Mogadishu. So in a sense, the coming together of Somalia was sabotaged by the country and the countries in the region in a big way. Ethiopians went in. Before that, unilaterally, like Kenya went in. The Somalis have a historical issue with Ethiopians, so they decided we are going to resist this.
For the sake of resistance? Or
no,
based on the historical issues?
It's a historical. It's just like the Germans. It's just like the French and the British,
right,
and the English. They fought for centuries. But of course, then of course the Somalis decided, these same guys have come and taken over our country. So they fought. They decided to fight and fight hard. The Ethiopians took numbers that essentially is unimaginable. They killed anything between 15,000 Ethiopian soldiers to 20,000 were killed in Mogadishu and its environs. And then finally they cut line and just took off, ran for the border. As for Kenya, because of the manner in which we had welcomed Somali refugees here, there has never been a historical problem between Kenya and Somalia. We minor things that were a creation of the colonial, legacy itself. In the case of Ethiopia, you're talking about hundreds of years, the differences between themselves. Kenya was, by and large, welcomed by the people who were in the region itself and said, okay, if they can help us get rid of Al-Shabaab, fair enough. So we had that debate in Parliament, in which we as a Parliament also resolved to support our forces and the decision of our government in Jubaland. But at that time, I remember I did not chair that particular session. Merenda was sharing that session, because I wanted to contribute to that session, being an interested party myself and coming from the neighboring constituency, as a matter of fact. I told them, we go in, we finish the job, we come out. We have entered, let's have an exit strategy as soon as possible. If we overstay our welcome, then we'll have a problem.
We'll create new problems.
We'll create powerful new problems. What did we do?
We went and camped there.
We went and we actually did not engage Al-Shabaab in that much. By the way, we lost less than 40 people in that whole thing. All the fighting was done by the Jubilant forces that were put together at that time. We lost over 1,000, 1,600, almost 2,000 lives. But what we did is we went straight to Kismayu. We created that corridor. And then we stayed put there and went into the business of now charcoal and sugar and God knows what.
So you're saying that Kenya went in and lost the plot in terms of what the initial plan was to be, to go in for a short period of time, come out, make sure that you instigate, at least instill some kind of peace and equilibrium.
Yeah.
But then we went in to do something else. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
With the knowledge of the government?
You see, we were not, there's something called deep state in any country. We didn't know what the deep state had in mind. Those people who did that unilateral decision were just a handful of people. The chief of Kenya Defense Forces those days, Karangi, the president, of course, who was there, an intelligence boss. We don't know what exactly they had. And who, by the way, as you put it earlier, all came from just one community. They were all from one family. So we don't know. And then they stayed put there. At some stage, the changes came in Somalia, and there's a government that is working very hard to reestablish its own authority on the four corners of the country. As a result of those massive loss of life on the part of the Ethiopians in that very, very bloody adventure when they went in, the same guys who came out of there from one community called the Oromos, when they went back, they realized, these people who ruled us for centuries, even themselves, they can die, they can cry, they can be cowards. And then they started the struggle they call Kero. Exactly the way our own independence struggle started. When Dedan Kimathi and Baimungi and all these guys went and fought in Bama, and they saw a white man cry.
They realized,
They realized, oh my God, this bullet is just as good in killing.
It kills people democratically.
It kills everybody.
Yes.
That's when we came back and had the Mau Mau struggle here starting immediately. And that's what happened in all of Africa. Everywhere where there was a resistance, it came about because of our people being taken to wars elsewhere, and then they come back with a massive courage.
All right.
So then it's a result of that you actually have the revolution that took place in Ethiopia, which brought in Abiy. Dr. Abiy and Meles Zenawi and the Tigray and all this, the TPLF lost big time. The same thing happened in Sierra Leone. When Sierra Leone was a country that had a proper powerful center, but they sent peacekeepers into Liberia. And if you remember, that guy was called Strasser, Captain Strasser. He was part of the peacekeeping force. But when he came back, he overthrew the government that was there, of the man who took over from Siaka Stevens. What was his name? Momo or something?
It was called, I think, Momo.
Right, Momo.
Yes.
Yeah.
The same thing happened also in Cote d'Ivoire. They got involved in Liberia. And then, of course, because they created, remember, Hafoi Boine was literally the blue-eyed boy.
He had been there from the very beginning.
Blue-eyed boy, the rich, and Cote d'Ivoire was the Paris of, Abidjan was the Paris of Africa. But because they felt they could go and mess a country in the neighbor and stay safe themselves, they never stayed safe. Cote d'Ivoire also became a failed state.
We're going to take a break. We're going to take a break, Farah, but I hear you already saying that Kenya went and has caused a mess.
Yes.
Kenya has caused the mess where they should have been helping, or felt that they were the leader or are the leader in the region and should be able to maintain some equilibrium, and didn't do that.
Actually, just do the job and get out and be there as a
Kenya should have done the job and gotten out. We're going to take a break and come back and open this up a little bit more. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We're talking about the simmering tensions between Kenya and Somalia. Farah Malim is in the studio with us today. The conversation continues.
The paper.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. The weather with Spice FM.
Mostly cloudy conditions in Nairobi today at 16 degrees. It will carry through with a high of 28 and lows of 16. It's partly cloudy in Nyeri at 15 degrees and highs of 27 and lows of 15. 28 degrees in Malindi, partly cloudy with highs of 33 and lows of 26. It's 27 degrees in Mombasa, a warm day today with highs of 33 and lows of 27. It's clear skies in Nakuru, a sunny morning, highs of 28 and lows of 15. Clear skies in Kisumu, and it's going to carry the day with highs of 31 and lows of 21. The sun is out in Eldoret as well at 14 degrees. We'll see highs of 26. Taking a skip over into East Africa in Kampala at 21 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 27 and lows of 21. And in Dar es Salaam, rain expected later as well at highs of 33 and lows of 25. And wrap things up in Lagos right now with clear skies at 28 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 34 and lows of 26.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
Biggest conversation in the Situation Room today, wherever you're tuned in to us around the country and yes, around the world as we stream live on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE on Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. We're talking about the simmering tensions, the diplomatic row between Kenya and Somalia at the moment. Joined in the studio today by Farah Malim, who is talking to us about, what is the cause of all of this. Before we went in, the last question was, Farah, we're saying Kenya went in and basically messed things up and refused to leave?
Well, they basically we are not doing the job we went in to do. We are not engaging Al-Shabaab. Yeah.
So what are we doing?
What are we doing there, sitting there? That's the point. We are not engaging Al-Shabaab. The last time Al-Shabaab engaged us in El Ade and in Kolbio, we're not engaging them.
Or the last time they engaged us was within our own boundaries.
Within our in the case of Kolbio, yes, Kolbio was just that. I think it's somewhere there. They're engaging us in Lamu every day. They're engaging us in Manda Bay. I mean, they're so bold. They did what they did.
So I hear you saying that the problem that we should have been sorting out, that Kenya should have been sorting out in Somalia, you actually have that problem mushrooming in Kenya's own backyard and not being able to deal with it, but still wanting to, stir the pot in Somalia?
My sister, all the members of parliament and the entire leadership from Northeastern Province went to see the president to tell him we have lost Northeastern Province to Al-Shabaab.
We have lost Northeastern Province to Al-Shabaab.
Yes. And we're here. We're suffering. Our schools are closing. Our health sector is going to suffer. We are suffering. You know what he told them? Go back. These are your own boys. You get my point? And come back with a solution. Come back to me with a solution. In other words, he's telling them, go in there and sort out the problem yourself. And it's not our own boys. This is not Mungiki. They're saying we sorted out our issue with our own boys. This is a different thing. It's an insurgency in another country where you went in yourself.
Now,
in the first place, we went into Somalia, so we engaged them there.
Did we stop Al-Shabaab in Somalia?
No. Now they came to follow us because your enemy is your enemy everywhere. If you're fighting me here, I'll fight you everywhere I can. So then when they come and hit us, instead of going and engaging them, you come to your own children and tell them, my friends, you better go sort out this thing. It's like a father in a house. And the child comes out and says, Dad, there are thugs coming in with pangas. And the father runs away and tells the children, go sort it out. Go and engage the thugs. You get my point? So in other words, there is absolutely no parallel between that two. The only parallel, the only relationship is that the ethnic Somalis are across there and we ethnic Somalis who are Kenyans. So here we are, as Kenyans, being told you're on your own. And then it goes beyond that. What does our government do? It starts engaging because of one reason or the other, and I don't know what those reasons are. And they have a tiff with the president in Somalia, and basically the issues that are there. It could be the maritime boundary.
There are many things that are going on right here. There's the redrawing of the boundary, the maritime war, back and forth, and then we see these clashes. But the sentiment that came from the president just a few days ago was very clear. And he said, look, let's not provoke. We have tried in terms of diplomatic relations in the region. And we see Somalia being as an ungrateful neighbor. That's what came out.
Who is provoking? The government that stays in your own territory, a foreign government occupation force that is in your own territory and picks up rebels to the center in that territory, takes them through its own territory and asks them to engage you, support them, arm them, do everything. Who is provoking? Kenya has taken the rebels, Madobe's people, taken them through Somalia in the sector where we control, which is AMISOM, brought them to Mandera. You get my point? Housed them in our own military camps, gave them all the equipments they need and the military equipments, and told them, go and engage your people. And Somalia is being fought from Kenya. This is the point people need to understand. So it's not a question of being ungrateful.
What you're saying is that Kenya has taken a side in the issues
absolutely
that are internal issues within Somalia.
Internal issues within Somalia. A fugitive, who was arrested and who escaped from prison is here now. And the forces that are there in Kismayu and those areas are the ones we are moving now to go and engage Somalia from Mandera.
So
Kenyans are saying we will become a collateral damage. Why do you want to destroy us? If they have to fight, why don't they fight in Somalia? You see, don't make them attack from Kenya. Let them sneak into Somalia and engage their own Somalis there.
Is there any merit in the thought that Jubaland and with what you call a leader with which there was no consultation with regional bodies like the AU, for example? Is there any thought that Kenya did actually try to make sure that they established some kind of peace in the area, and now this could have been seen as the toppling of that equilibrium?
You see, we live on both sides of the border as a clans. Everybody.
Right. So now we're looking at these simmering tensions that come out. And then when President Uhuru Kenyatta says, look here, don't provoke it by doing what you're doing.
Who is provoking? I am asking you. Why don't you see, we need independent Kenyan minds to go and look at this thing. Who is provoking? We are the ones hosting the fugitives. Supposing we have a new movement in Kenya right now, which is against the government, against the Nairobi government. And that movement is hosted by Somalia. And it's armed by Somalia. And it's sent back to Kenya to come and engage. Who is provoking? Is it Kenya or Somalia which has armed our own rebels to come and attack us?
Against this background, is that the reason why the MPs from northern Kenya who went to Somalia received so much attention?
Before you answer that, Farah, I want us to take a look at traffic, and we're going to come back because it's going to take us a minute to deal with that one. We'll take a look at the situation on the roads and come back and continue with this in a few. All right, now looking at internal roads, Kitusuru to Peponi and then out towards Westlands. It's crazy traffic, and then people having used that option to try and get away with what had been experienced at the 87. Not happening today, folks, so it's very, very heavy right around Westlands today. Ngong Road, it's great, but right now, between Naivasha Road and Dagoretti Corner inbound seems to be a mess. Outbound as well. Okay, on the southern bypass, because of the state of some parts of the road, then getting to Langata, it's taking us a little bit of a problem when you're trying to join Langata Road. Coming down, there's traffic all the way from the Bomas of Kenya. That'll open up as soon as possible. We see Limuru Road Limuru Road clear all the way to town, getting past the village market, not a problem at all. At Safari Park Hotel, Thika Road is traffic all the way to the roundabouts, then leading you to Limuru Road as well. Okay, so everywhere you look, we're right in the middle of traffic hour. We'll try to find some alternatives for you once we know what those are. No accidents or incidents so far, so it's a good day. We hope that it stays that way. Spice of MKE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us know what you see. We want to keep it moving for everybody so that you get where you're going on time.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
You tune into Kenya's biggest conversation. We're talking today, right now, about the simmering tensions between Somalia and Kenya. In the studio with Farah Malim. And CT, your question just before we went into the break.
Well, the question is simply this. There were MPs from Kenya who come from the northern part of the country who visited Somaliland. Somalia, not the federal state of Somalia.
Yes. Mogadishu.
Yes, Mogadishu. Mm-hmm. So when they came back, they've received a lot of attention from the media. They've received a lot of attention from the government. Mm-hmm. They've received a lot of attention from security forces. That's why I'm calling it attention. And I'm saying, is it against this background that they receive that amount of attention?
Farah, does it have anything to do with that?
Yes. You see, we stand to lose. If there's a problem between the two countries and the rate at which Al-Shabaab has already taken over our area, we are losing. The Somalis of Kenya have lost.
Lost what?
Everything. We don't have schools. We don't have schools that are functioning. Mm-hmm. We don't have security. Our people are getting killed every day. Both sides. Mm-hmm. Al-Shabaab is killing them. The military also, but the security on our side is also doing certain damages because there's so many people who are enforced disappearances. We don't know where they are. So here we are suffering. We come to our president to ask him, Mr. President, as the commander-in-chief of the Kenyan Armed Forces, as the president of this country, do something, please.
So are you saying that these 11 MPs who traveled?
Hang on a minute. Let me just finish. We come to our president. Our president tells us, and the problem is from Somalia. The genesis and the roots of Al-Shabaab is in Somalia. And then they decide to go to Somalia to see what can be done between the two countries, because the two governments and the two presidents, in bringing them closer so that we can collectively deal with this problem and secure our region.
Is that why they went to Somalia?
Yes. Nothing else. Nothing else. Just to see how our own region can be secured.
Take us back a little.
And we knew what was building up.
Farah, take us back a little bit. Are we saying that this same group of 11 MPs or even more came to the president of Kenya, Uhuru Kenyatta, and asked, we need to do something about this so that we have these tensions die down? And are you saying that the president and the rest of the government chose to turn a blind eye and did not do anything about this until the only option they had was to go to Somalia without clearance to ask for audience from the Somalia leader? Is that what we're saying?
Let me tell you exactly what happened. It's not 11 members of parliament who went and sat with the president. It's over 30.
Here in Kenya?
Here in Nairobi, in the State House. And they talked. 5 of them talked. One somebody talking on education, on security, on infra. They're talking about everything. President told them, go. And
he said go? He did not address this issue? Is that what you're saying, Farah?
That's what I'm telling you.
Unequivocally,
can I just
that
finish?
He said no.
Yes,
that we're not going to deal with this?
Tell them,
really?
This is your own problem. You know the problems, you people. Go back, consult between yourselves, and come back to me after 2 weeks. Then they went and engaged the Director of Intelligence. They engaged the Inspector General. They said, well, how about if we go to Somalia and have, because the two centers are not that close now, Farmajo and Uhuru are not in the best of
terms
from the look of things. We might as well go there and find out how they can help us also secure our side, so that they can secure their side from us, and we see how the two governments can work together on this.
If it was that.
Can I just finish? And they went with the blessings of our own Director of Intelligence and our own Inspector General.
So why didn't we hear that when they came back? It
But
turned,
they
it, it
said
turned,
it-
it
it's
turned
just
to
that
be a
it
totally
just
different
wasn't
story.
reported.
It turned to be a totally different story,
It's
and we
there,
have now
it's
stories
there.
of espionage
It's
and
there, it's
treason
there.
and all kinds of
But
things.
Ndu, we asked the same question here. These fellows didn't leave Kenya in dark.
Of course, they didn't go in
11
secret.
people with their own other stuff living. You call
Surely,
it dark.
surely they left in broad daylight, came back in broad daylight.
They were waving to people. They were expected. They even called the media. They wanted it to be seen because these were prophets of peace. Basically, what you would call they were out there to bring the two countries closer, to try and deal with these things. They went there.
Why would it have been so difficult to get some kind of clearance?
Clearance from who?
Oh, clearance even from the speaker. You were in that position.
No.
Oh, come on, Farah. Farah, you were in that position at some time.
And
You
can
said
I-
that
can I
never-
educate you?
No,
Can I-
please do.
How-
Because
how
at
does
this
it
point,
work?
how does it work? You were there. Doesn't it work in a way that clearance is necessary for you to make such a trip? You were in that position, Farah. How would it then work?
Can I explain something?
Please
Yes,
do.
Yeah. And for God's sake, I want Kenyans and you people in the media to open up your own eyes and look at this. At least follow the TV and everything that happens around here. What did the speaker say? The speaker said there's nothing to grill MPs about that. What they did, they're perfectly allowed to do it. They did not go there as a team which was sent, a committee sent from here. They went there as their own caucus, the caucus of MPs from Northeastern Province. And they explained it. They said, we talked to the Director of Intelligence. I mentioned this in media houses, on social media and everything more than 10 times. Just look at my Twitter handle and see what I've said there. It's just that people choose to go on some kind of a sensationalism that does not exist. What espionage? How do you go with espionage? Do you know what espionage is?
Oh, I mean, this is what it was called.
what is the
It's
what
supposed
is
to be secretive in nature.
espionage is a secretive nature, something that's happening clandestinely in your own midst.
There was nothing clandestine about the
11 MPs going on a single flight together and coming back waving hands and going seeking a press conference is espionage.
But you have to see how this.
And then the president, they told Farmajo, please reach out to our president, talk to him. Farmajo has reached out to our president and talked to him and said, let's de-escalate these things. Look, you want the truth?
Yes, always.
Whoever is pushing us into these things, we have it wrong, and all these problems is from our side.
Are you suggesting that there is a nefarious agenda? One.
Yes.
I'm going to go back into, you're saying, going into Somalia with the armed forces, it was understood.
Yes.
Staying there, a different agenda was now being served.
Yes.
And you're saying the lack of interest that has been shown by security forces, as has been reported in northern Kenya, you also see another agenda altogether.
Serious agenda. Let me tell you, I don't blame. There's something I don't blame about our security machinery, and the British got to learn it. Everybody got to learn it. You cannot engage bandits in northeastern province except with a special force that traces them and chases them and tracks them on foot.
Who knows
Essentially,
exactly
that-
where they are?
And who knows?
It
Basically,
helps if they know.
Yes.
Essentially, it's the reason why it is argued that the Americans lost the Vietnam War.
Yes, absolutely.
They were fighting against guerrilla fighters.
They got a guerrilla fight. All they needed to do was to create a very powerful South Vietnamese force to do that, empower the South Vietnamese. On the contrary, the other side was empowering the Viet Congs. You know what they call the Viet Congs.
Yeah, they were called Viet Congs. Yes.
And you see, you have a young boy born in Tennessee, 25 years old. Poor guy comes out there and you tell him to go and chase this.
Southeast Asian forest
in that jungle.
with malaria.
You now tell a Luo boy, just straight from the military, the police in Kiganjo, or a Kikuyu boy, who has never herded cows or camels, never lived in that kind of a harsh environment, to go and follow these people on trail like that, they'll slaughter them. And that's exactly what the British learned. There were insurrections and battles by Somali clans against the British in Kenya, which the Kenyan historians have chosen never to revisit them and talk about them, because always you tend to take history in only one direction.
It's called to gloss over certain things.
Gloss over, forget about it.
And
Yeah.
think of the
As far
history
as
that
we are
favors
concerned,
you.
history is the only person who fought for independence that we talk about all the time is Jomo Kenyatta. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And basically, Jomo was never a guerrilla fighter out there. But all the other guerrilla fighters, they were either dead, Mungi was killed by our own people, and Chui were killed, and all those people were killed. And the only guy who was killed by the British was Dedan Kimathi. And even Dedan Kimathi has never gotten that much of a publicity in here. So we have a lot of that. Then what happened, I'll tell you. When the British lost the plot against the Somali clans in NFD those days, they went to Somalia, which is now called Somaliland. And got soldiers from there who were brought in here to fight and engage their fellow ethnic Somalis. And that's how the British won against the Somali clans in Kenya. So what we are telling them now is that Moi did it also during his time. He created what he called anti-shifter or anti-bandits or anti-poaching units, which are composed of Turkana, Samburu, Masai, Somali, Pokot. These people who basically are pastoralists. And they cleaned up the place. We keep telling them, do a similar thing to clean up Al-Shabaab from in our midst.
But let's even look at Kenya and ask yourself, even the fight for independence. The Home Guard was predominantly from central Kenya.
Absolutely. The same people who are the Mau Mau, and who you look for their own ethnic group, who know the terrain, who know everything, and that's how the Mau Mau was lost. Mau Mau basically never won. The Mau Mau was completely demolished by the Home Guards.
They were.
And it's only when after independence, because our independence was not achieved through fights for information. Our independence was achieved through negotiations and that global, decolonization that was going on all over the continent.
It had been acknowledged by the Prime Minister of the UK,
yes.
And they had accepted that this was something that was going to take place. So they were ushering it in.
Absolutely. It's just a matter of time.
Bringing this back home now to Kenya and talking about, what you said, Northeastern has lost, and coming back to that and saying we don't have anything, and then these clashes or these interclan clashes are then being used to be looked at the reason as to why we can't regain anything in northeastern Kenya. How is that supposed to then be solved?
Before we get there, there's something that must be acknowledged about these native fighting forces before independence. They highlighted issues that without their fighting would never have been acknowledged, and they also showed that the might of the British Empire could be challenged.
Yeah.
They may have lost the war, but they actually put into the public space something that had not been seen before. And the British understood that this was something you didn't want to continue all over their colonies. So it was safer and wiser to take an easier step. But back to your question, yes.
This, even our own forces, if they're going to go and fight and engage a number of other forces, maybe including even the central government in Somalia, in Jubaland and the rest of it. By the time they come back here, they're not going to be those timid, docile young boys.
No, they would have grown up here. Truth be told, but I'm coming back to this.
What we have in here, the corruption, the crazy kind of a thing we've had for 60 years, my friend, we are playing with fire. By getting involved in those things, and you send your boys there, and many of them get killed, others suffer, do everything else. Finally, they come back here. It's going to be exactly like the Ethiopians who went in there.
What should Kenya have done? What should Kenya have done or not done? Or are you saying should have not gone in the first place?
No, he said gone and come out.
Well, I'm saying looking at it now with how things have unfolded.
The manner in which we went in itself was suspect. When you look at the deep state, up to now, I don't know why we went in there. Because if we went in there to get rid of Al-Shabaab, Operation Linda Inchi, which, by the way, was done as a consequence of... you remember all these blow-ups that were happening in Nairobi and everything?
Yes, they were.
Yes.
They began
and then there's this white couple somewhere near Lamu.
It was
Kiwayu, yes.
Who abducted.
And finally it turns out that those were not even abducted by Al-Shabaab. And all those blow-ups that are happening in Nairobi here, Al-Shabaab denied and said, no, we didn't do it.
We're going to take a break now, but
and some of us, including myself at that time, said, I suspect it's the Kenyan intelligence which is doing that. I'm serious.
That's
to what end?
Conspiracy theory at its
the highest order.
That's the highest order, yes. But you see, don't just count it out. Because
but then we have to ask...
Why did it all stop at one go?
Unto what end? Unto what end? And we're going to come back after the break and look at that. Unto what end? If it was Kenyan intelligence doing this, unto what end? For what reason? This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll take a break and come back and continue with the conversation.
Spice FM.
It's in Kenya's
Nyeri.
biggest conversation wherever you're listening to us from, in Nairobi or online and around the country as well, looking at what is unfolding between Kenya and Somalia right now. Farah, just before we went into the break, talking about, it could be, according to you, that Kenyan intelligence had a part to play in all of this in the beginning. And I was asking the question, unto what end?
If that is the case, then we also had similar bombs in Dar es Salaam. So are we saying the Kenyan intelligence also went to Dar es Salaam?
Yeah, Farah, did they do that as well?
No, you see, in Dar es Salaam, the blow-up in Dar es Salaam was done by Al-Qaeda.
And they took credit for it.
They took credit for it. They owned it. It's just like the American embassy bombing here, which happened in 1998.
Mm-hmm. The Al-Qaeda took credit for it.
Al-Qaeda took credit for that.
Yes.
The only thing that Al-Shabaab took credit for and did was the bombing in Kampala. You remember that?
The football stadium, yes.
And that's understandable because of the commitment of Ugandan forces into Somalia. They took credit for the Dusit attack. They took credit for the Westgate
attack.
They always take credit for whatever they do. But all those things like a matatu being thrown or something inside and a shop, blowing up
the
somewhere.
so-called little ones that we see.
Little ones that we're seeing. They actually said, no, we didn't do those things. But the impression you get is that this was a carefully crafted manner in which we were trying to do a justification for our own unilateral decision.
Onto what end, Farah? I keep asking you, for what reason? What would be the reasoning behind something like that? Basically saying that a country's intelligence is attacking its own people.
This is what you would. I'm not saying that the intelligence is attacking. I'm telling you that there are gaps in using your own intelligence, and that's
actually there's a history behind such conspiracy theories.
Always.
There was a time in our history when the Norfolk Hotel was bombed. It's a little back in history. Someone may not remember. There was a lot of talk around why it was. Around that same time, OTC. Yes, around that same time, Jim Kariuki had died.
Absolutely.
So people looked into that, went back and said, wait, let's pause for a second.
Yes.
What really was happening here? Now, if you remember, when I talked about Idi Amin claiming that parts of Kenya belong to Uganda, it didn't happen in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Certain things were happening, and then out of the blues, Idi Amin declared his border ends at Naivasha.
Yes.
And that was our focus. The entire focus of the country was there's a possibility we might be invaded by Uganda. So there is a history of issues that lend themselves to conspiracy that we've had. So if one looks at events, one can draw from that and say, talking of Westgate, what was the army doing at Westgate?
There are only 4 boys in there. And we have our 4 boys, including private security, who are there and who had already pinned them down into one room.
Finished, done.
And they were just going to be taken out. And a very courageous young boy from the wreck, I think it was called Kimani or Kamausan, was shot in the back.
By our own people.
By our own. And they pulled them out. They said, get out. What did they do after that?
And
then you had the chief of Kenya Defense Forces out there as if we were involved in a war, taking over the media and saying that we are in the front line of international terrorism.
And it was during his tenure as Chief of General Staff that he went into Somalia.
Absolutely.
So you're saying that in this case there's a case for conspiracy and that I'm
there
hearing
is a question that must be answered.
Right, sure. So I keep asking, and Farah, I'd like you to answer this. Unto what end?
No, I'm sorry if I mispronounce your name.
I'm likely Ndu. Yes, I'm likely to accept at this point.
You would be amazed at the name she is called.
Many things have come through. Many conspiracy theories.
Ndu. There are too many things that happen in statecraft. That you get to know about it much. You get to know about it much and later. And I don't know. We don't know.
We don't know.
One thing for sure I know is that a lot has got to do with the maritime boundary. Those blocks were worked on by our own people. The French were there. The Total was there. Eni was there. Rumor has it a lot of money has changed hands, running into billions of Kenya shillings. And for whatever reasons, and of course, then we have this issue which is now in court, and Somalis have become very adamant
For the redrawing of the boundary.
No. You see, the redrawing of the boundary in Mandela is a very, very simple matter. There's nothing to be redrawn in there because you can just get. These are two communities that live next to one another, and all that they're talking about is probably 50 meters this way, 50 meters that way.
Actually, to be honest, if one were to speak about it, it's not two communities. It's one community.
Just one community
that
on
has
both
been
sides.
divided by a border that was created with colonialism.
Yes. And when they talk about the wall was, where's the money?
In America, they've talked about that wall with Mexico. How far has that gone?
And of
what
course,
would it actually help?
And let me tell you one thing. In the past, in the olden days, third world countries, when they fail, and their countries are in a massive mess, maybe financially, economically, security-wise, and the rest of it, class wars, all you claim is that communists have attacked us.
For the longest time, that was it.
That way you will get the unfettered and unimaginable, what do you call, support from the West always.
Remember,
so if you're looking for support from the country now in terms of what's happening then with Kenya and Somalia and with the expressions that we've seen coming out of the mouth of the President Uhuru Kenyatta, are we saying that it is propaganda continuing?
You see, what I'm saying is that nowadays, in the latter years, including our Muslim countries, the leaders of Muslim countries, when they cannot get sufficient, democratic space, or they can't have the human rights and everything else, the first thing they'll say is that, we are threatened by Islamic terrorism.
Yes.
That way you can easily get the support of the West. Very, very easy.
Especially if there's a threat on the production of oil.
If there's a threat on the production of oil and other things. So basically, there are a lot of things that we don't know. The Saudis and the Emirates have sabotaged the Somali oil for 70 years. They don't want it to come out of the ground.
It's not in their interest, really.
It's not in their interest. And they have supported what you call Al-Shabaab. They have supported all these other insurgency and opposition politicians. And they are permanently here in Nairobi, the intelligence and everything else.
In fact, so the question that we're asking is, when we went to war in Somalia, whose interests were we actually serving in addition to our own?
Whose?
Yes.
It could be anybody. It could be the big multinationals.
Is it possible for anyone to go to war to serve any other interest apart from your own?
Yes.
The
answer is that
always happens.
I'm looking at this.
The answer is
I'm
yes.
looking for this specific situation whereby this is what we are discussing right now between Kenya and Somalia.
Yeah,
if we draw from examples around the world, this one, why did the US attack Iraq? They said it was because Iraq had developed weapons of mass destruction. They galvanized the NATO nation, they galvanized Great Britain, and in the end, there were no such weapons. Absolutely.
None. So are you saying
and then they go to Syria and Trump.
So are you saying there's really not an issue then between Kenya and Somalia? Are we seeing just rumblings
There should never be any issue between the two countries.
Should never be. If we're living in an ideal world, that could be. But so are we saying the rumblings that we see actually don't exist? Is that what you're saying, Farah?
Well, I think it's a creation.
A creation by whom? And again, onto what end?
But let me ask a different question.
Really, Farah? on that one, is it...
Mheshimiwa,
yes.
If we look at the tiffs that we've had of a political nature between the two countries, let me ask the question, with the exception of the meeting that you said the leaders from northern Kenya had with the president, there are those who say that the problems that you also have are fermented by locals themselves. How true is this?
The problem of what?
The problems of insecurity, the problems of instability.
Let me tell you one thing. Al-Shabaab is an insurgency in Somalia. It is an offshoot of Al-Qaeda.
It is, as it's been reported.
Yes. It's a big thing.
Yes.
It's a big thing.
Why has it grown?
It has nothing to do with clanism and the rest of it.
It's beyond clanism.
It's beyond clanism.
So are you saying that it's the one place where clans sort of like agree on one thing?
No, there are no clan agreements in there. It's you see what these people did.
Religious interest?
Well, they brainwashed young people who are fighting for Al-Shabaab as young as 15, 16, 17, very young people. They brainwashed them. Mm-hmm. They find a way to get them, suck them into this. Somalia, massive unemployment in Somalia, massive unemployment everywhere. And basically, even if we continue right now with the kind of a vacuum that we have created. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it's also organized crime. Because what they do, they're taxing. They're collecting revenue.
Essentially,
They're even collecting revenue from our own, what do you call, pastoralists. They come to you, they catch you, they put you in prison, they threaten you with death, or then you have to
or your family.
offer some camels and cows, which they then go and sell.
So what you're saying is that the locals in the northern part of the country suffer greatly from Al-Shabaab.
They suffered the most. The biggest victims of Al-Shabaab are Somalis in Somalia and Somalis in Kenya. And by the way, let me tell you, do you know that there's a very powerful nexus between Kenya Defense Forces, Al-Shabaab, and the local administration in Jubaland?
Explain this, please.
Could you explain that a little?
Charcoal business. They're together. You haven't you seen the UN report?
I have read the
crisis
reports
report.
even.
All
I
of
have
them.
read.
Yeah, they're together.
How true are those reports?
Very true. Very true. They share the loot.
So what you're saying is that the insecurity, as we're seeing it, is actually a business.
It's a business, big time business. Everything we're suffering right now, everything, whether it's the oil blocks, you get my point, or whether it is all of it is one way or the other has individual private interests in there, and it's all business, all money.
So these diplomatic tensions that we are seeing between one country to another is just is a cover.
Need not be there.
Need not be there.
Yes.
So
Why? Can I
on
ask you
both sides-
why do we have it? We claim that they're auctioning those blocks. They said no. The whole world said they're not auctioning the blocks. They're auctioning blocks that are hundreds of kilometers away from it, if not thousands. You get my point? And then what else? They're waiting for the court. We were the ones who submitted ourselves to the court in the first place. They wanted to settle this outside court the very first time. We never gave them an opportunity. The government before Farmajo, Hassan Sheikh Mahmoud. And again, suddenly now we have all these issues. And what are the issues now?
What I hear you saying is that, one, the issues that we are discussing are actually non-issues, but they're issues because there are people who are making them issues.
The people who are making them issues, even if the issues that can be handled very well and eliminated. For example, the insecurity in the place. Give it to a small special force of about 200 pastoralists in there. They'll clean up the whole province in less than 6 months. Anybody doing that to them, to give them? No.
When you talk about independence, there is a...
It's the same way that the four boys, these guys were pinned up in a place. They were going to be all immobilized, yes. But we decided shoot one of them in the back, withdraw all the rest of them, bring in the big military equipments in there, turn the place into a mayhem, and in the process we lost 67 Kenyan lives.
We're going to continue
this. I want to ask you, why did that happen? Have Kenyans really gone to the bottom of that? What happened to the commission, the inquiry into that?
I think we maybe want to go into that for another 10 minutes or so when we come off the break. If we can keep you around, Farah, to go a little bit more deep into the solutions. Because at the end of the day, people are saying we can't be up in a limbo for forever. Where are we going to go? How are we going to bring this down to the point where now we're able to interact bilaterally in a diplomatic way, in a peaceful way, and maintain equilibrium in the area? We are in discussions about what's going on with Somalia and Kenya at the moment. Farah Malim is in the studio today. We'll be back in a bit. All right, Langata Road is very clear today. All the way, we had a little bit of an chock-a-block situation right around the Bomas of Kenya, but that has opened up now. You can use Langata Road, join it from the southern bypass, go all the way down the road, no problem today. Thika Road today is slow, but it's moving, so you get into the city center without much of a problem. Gong Road now has opened up and there is no traffic as such. It's moving, even though you have to hold on a little bit here and there. Limuru Road still giving us those vibes today, trying to get past the village market and into the city center. Of course, we have an influx of traffic from Westlands, those who try to avoid what was the Westlands roundabout, but that should open up soon as well. Friday morning, people are rushing around trying to get things done, but let's see how it looks like in a while. For now, not so bad everywhere you look. Mombasa Road moving quite slowly still, right around between Cabanas and the JKIA junction, but that should be all right as we head on out of traffic hour in a short while. If you see anything, do let us know. North the northern bypass, the southern bypass, and the eastern bypass, in and out of Mombasa Road and Thika Road, A-OK today, folks. Spice FM KE. Let us know what you see, and we'll try and make sure that we keep it moving this Friday morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down.
Kenya's biggest conversation in the Situation Room this morning, wherever you're tuned in to us on 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 96.0 in Nakuru, in Eldoret on 96.7, 90.9 in Nyeri, 102.5 in Kisumu, and 97.9 in Malindi. The live stream's up, of course, on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, wherever you're tuned in online as we continue the discussion. Today's proverb before we go back into the conversation.
Only an animal who uses its teeth for climbing knows which tree is better.
Absolutely.
Mheshimiwa seems to know the meaning of this proverb.
He seems to have unpacked it already.
The teeth or the claws also?
I'm using teeth.
In this case, just teeth.
If you use your teeth for climbing, we assume they climb more than one tree. It's them who will be able to tell you which particular tree is better because they use their teeth.
Amazing. I don't know of any animal that uses its teeth to climb. I know of animals that use their claws to climb.
Very true. But if animals use their teeth, then they would understand which tree is better.
Yes,
better. All right. The conversation continues, and looking at these simmering tensions, you say that it could be that there really is no problem, that these are non-issues. Farah, is that
well?
Really?
There are issues, but we are in the dark. We're in the dark because nobody's talking openly about the real issues.
What are the real issues according to you? And if we can really look at them.
That's why then we come into conspiracy theories.
So it's not real, it's conspiratorial in this case.
Why don't we dive into these conspiratorial waters? What do you think? Remember, we will challenge those theories, but what do you think?
You know, it's you can do that by elimination method. Look, two things. I am a patriotic Kenyan who loves his country more than anything else. I'm an ethnic Somali who cares about Somalis wherever they are. But at the end of the day, this is my country. I don't see mutual exclusion on the interest of the two countries, where you say
one supersedes the other.
One supersedes the other. One is subordinate to the other. These are two things that are mutually inclusive, just like the British interest and the American interest. Because Britain was, after all, the founder of America, or rather, basically not the founder, but the America is
actually not only founder, owner
of America. It was founded by Christopher Columbus, they say, which is nonsense because there were people there when they found it.
Right?
Yes, but basically it's owned by the British, as you put it.
Yes,
and we are basically what you call the most diverse Africans in the continent. You literally find us everywhere, including Nigeria, doing business. So
Nigeria, South Africa.
Now, South Africa, big numbers. Nigeria, they've started going in there in big numbers also right now because it's a big, massive market. And we would want to see an integration of the region. I have no problem with the political, economic, social integration between Kenya and Somalia. As a matter of fact, the Somalis have bent backwards over to accord us that. Today, as we talk, there are over 70,000 Kenyans working in Somalia.
And Kenya has not done the same?
There are no Somalis working in Kenya. There are only Somali refugees in refugee camps in Kenya who are there by the United Nations Convention.
There are no Somalis working
All the
in this
Somalis
country.
you see in Kenya that you assume are Somalis from Somalia are Kenyans.
Are Kenyans.
Yes.
Every single
That's the
one.
mistake people make. And it happened to me, by the way. It did happen to me. I was in Parliament, the 7th Parliament.
And somebody said
in
you were a Somali
1993.
refugee.
Yes. And I remember the late Mcharo Kubo, who was a very good friend of mine. Mcharo, he was an MP from... something Mcharo, I can't remember the second name, whether it was Kubo, another name, yeah.
Actually, Kubo's a Taita name?
Yeah, Mcharo is a Taita name, of course.
Yes.
He was a Taita, he was an
Mcharo,
MP from
yes.
Taita.
Yes.
One day we were having in the common room there, and basically where you in the lounges there, we were having a nice talk, and he said, but Kenya is such a generous country. It even gave you, a refugee from Somalia, an opportunity to be a member of parliament in Kenya.
Imagine that.
How did you take that one?
No, I and the man is an educationist. The man is somebody who got his first degree most likely from Makerere University before independence. And that is how little he knows about the Somalis.
The other side of the coin also makes sense, though, Farah, because if somebody could make the mistake and think that you were a Somali refugee and you are actually a Kenyan,
Yes.
it could be on the other side that people could be saying these are Kenyans when in another case they actually are Somali refugees. The other side of the argument also makes sense.
Well, the refugees and the refugee camps, and many of them left this country, and they're very grateful to this country because we hosted them, and they settled in America, in Europe, in Canada, in everywhere. Not to say also that at that time, we were also very lucky to have the refugees among us because there was a lot of dollars coming in. Before that, Moi, we had become a pariah. You don't remember that? We were under some kind of a sanctions from the World Bank and IMF and the international community. So they came in at the right time when the shilling had already taken a massive beating. I remember by the time the Somali refugees were coming in, the shilling was transacting at about 80 shillings. And,
Yes.
and within a year or two, it came down to about 40. And central bank had actually to mitigate that because our products were becoming very expensive. Our industrial products for the neighboring countries were becoming very expensive.
Yes.
So basically, in a sense, Somalis have had a lot to do with our own economic stability for a very long time. So we have gained from them; they have gained from us. It's just fair for everybody.
Absolutely, in this case.
And they did not put any what do you call pressures on our own social amenities here because we were not paying for them. The UN was paying for them. On the contrary, the UN was paying us for to host them and take care of the security.
So if there is this fantastic brotherly
Can I
relationship,
Yeah.
then the tensions that we see, how then to solve them or resolve them?
That's the point. That's what I'm trying to say. But the sad part of it is that I don't know, for lack of better word, this country is so bloody corrupt. Talking about Kenya, so rotten corrupt that we shoot ourselves in the foot. The Somalis who are here living right now from Somalia and from Europe and America and all over the world are people who are well-to-do.
They're able to afford certain
They
things.
come to spend money here. They come to spend dollars in our own economy. And then you find a situation in which ministers are sent away from the airport because they did not pay a small bribery to some immigration officer out there. Somali ministers. What did the Ethiopians do and the Turks do? They said, my friends, you can come in with your passports into our country. You don't have to have a visa at source.
Just walk in.
Just walk in. Overnight, we lost between 150,000 to 200,000 Somali families that were spending on average between $5,000 and even more than $5,000 a month on their families. The Turks were very happy. They said, welcome. You can buy a house, a flat for 50,000 because property is very cheap in Turkey. Because of the lira had gone down, had taken a beating. You remember sometimes back, the economy was doing poorly. And they went and invested heavy. They invested big time in they used to, all Somalis used to transit through Nairobi because Nairobi was the favorite destination for them.
So are you saying that
Today, they are transiting through Addis Ababa because they have no problem in Addis Ababa.
So are you saying that
We lost on average $750 million revenue on a monthly basis? That's about
Not yearly.
Almost 10. No. 150,000 Somalis, families, each one of them spending between $4,000 and $5,000. Just calculate per month. Taking their children to the top schools, eating and dining in the top restaurants everywhere. You know what I mean? And spending their money here. They make the money elsewhere and they come and spend it here with us.
I hear the appraisal of how well Somali business has come and boosted the profile of Kenya economically. But then in this case, we're coming back again to these tensions that we are seeing. In terms of resolve, if these tensions actually do exist, what needs to happen?
You need to have some real
Is it that
sages.
You see the
people of wisdom.
There are
People like Moi. People like the Kibaki. Mudaura. Do you know what Mudaura used to say?
no.
He used to tell the security, don't touch these Somalis.
So you're saying that
As the head of civil service, he used to say, you don't know how you're messing us. Don't touch them.
So the best thing to do to sort
Ndungu,
out this
Governor Ndungu, Dr. Ndungu.
Yes.
Dr. Ndungu was a central bank governor.
Yes.
He was an ardent advocate for allowing the Somalis to stay in here. Kibaki even suggested one time, let's give citizenship to the 500,000 who are here.
Is that the solution?
Well, it was not a
Some of the things
solution
that we're
because
looking at
most
now.
of them don't even want
No,
to come and
but
get
is there a
citizenship here.
permanent solution to
Majority
such
of-
problems, Ndu?
Is there something that we can do, because we're going to continue going in this?
No.
The rumblings are going to continue.
It's not do. From what I hear Mheshimiwa saying, there are certain things we must undo.
Yeah.
Not do. They were done, they are causing the problems. If they are undone,
Then we're somewhere. We're somewhere. Let us de-escalate all these things. Let us not undermine the center in Mogadishu. Because it's only a matter of time when they will also start undermining you.
but Mheshimiwa, there are those who also claim.
Let us wait for this thing, whatever it is. As soon as the matter which is in the I know
The ICJ, yes.
the ICC, the
ICJ,
the ICJ matter itself is pretty big thing.
It's a bone of contention that can't be ignored.
It's a bit of contention, yes, but it's there in an international court. Anybody who makes the first move politically loses out completely. If President of Somalia decides to pull that thing out or withdraw the case from,
He has a problem.
he's finished. He's finished, I'm telling you.
Meaning the matter need not have gone to ICJ.
It did not have to go to ICJ. Why did it go to ICJ in the first place? Our problem, the Kenyan problem. They tried very hard to engage us. We rubbished them.
There was something I was going to say, and it's exactly in the form of a question.
And how much money did our own government use through the Attorney General's chambers for lawyers and everybody else? So even the idea of going to of the court in the first place might have been informed on our part, because somebody wanted to make some additional bucks here and there.
Well,
Billions of Kenya shillings.
There's a question I must ask.
well, we're going to let you ask that last question, as we
Yes.
need to bring everything to a head this morning, CT.
Yes.
So,
You see, a lot of the investments that people refer to in Kenya from the Somali community living in Kenya, many claimed it had to do with piracy in the high seas. That's number one. Claimed. But if you look at the current problems that we say we have and the back and forth that we keep having, is it that there are people who benefit from this state that we are in, this confusion, this back and forth? And do you honestly think that there are people within government as we speak who desire to actually have a real solution?
Well, I think there's the second question, the last question, that there's a problem. There are people in the government who are not in the government also, but very influential in the advice to the government, like the former chief of the Kenya Defense Forces, Karangi, and the rest of them, who basically have, all that going into Somalia, all that charcoal, all that money that's paid by the UN and the money that's paid by the Kenya government to the Somali administration, to the Jubaland administration. There's a lot of money that changes hands there. I know that there's been a lot that has been happening between those people in this state. I don't want to go into the depth of it because of the way the sensitivity is there. But there are those people who still have certain influence in advising, I think, our president and other people who are not necessarily in the government right now, who don't, they think the problems that are there right now is going to assist them one way or the other. Professor Kagwanja is one of them. Professor Kagwanja.
He even writes about such things.
He writes about that thing. He talks about his problem was in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs before.
Yes,
right.
And we understand.
When the wife left, the Foreign Affairs did not have a problem again.
Okay.
Now it's in defense.
Right.
Do as we close. I was getting some. I really have to ask this question. This one has to be asked because the claim has been that many of the people who advise the government happen to come from certain clans within Somaliland, meaning
Within the Somali nation.
the Somali nation and community, and that they have influence within the Kenyan government, but their origins can be traced back to specific clans
Kenya.
within.
That is true. I mean, let me tell you one thing. The Jubaland administration spent a lot of money in the elections last time in Garissa, in Garissa County. The administration in the Somali region of Ethiopia spent millions of dollars in locally here.
In which county?
Garissa County mainly.
Well, all
In
right.
both cases.
It seems
So
that-
just look at the people who are holding positions now, who one way or the other are beneficiaries of that,
so
and
I
how
hear
they
you-
advise the government.
So
You know what I mean?
there's a deeper inside story. Of course, this could be lent to your conspiracy, Farah. Thank you for joining us today as we look at the underbelly of many of these issues. It would be interesting to have you in the room again to look at some of these things. But thank you for being here. Thank you so
I want
much.
to believe that our president has the best of intentions, but he's not being advised properly. And somebody needs to really tell him the truth in there. And the consequences of this brinkmanship that we're doing now. But let's watch.
Whatever the truth may be, this is Kenya's biggest conversation. You're in the Situation Room. We'll be back in a short bit.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Let me do better.
The weather with Spice FM.
It's a mostly cloudy day in Nairobi today. 18 degrees. We're looking at a high of 28 and a low of 16. Taking a look into Nyeri at 17 degrees. It's warming up. Partly cloudy conditions will continue with highs of 28. In Malindi today at 27 degrees. Mostly cloudy conditions. Highs of 32. And in Mombasa, it's at 28 degrees. Mostly cloudy conditions with highs of 33. In Nakuru at 16 degrees. Clear skies with highs of 28 and lows of 15. In where are we? In Kisumu, mostly cloudy conditions with highs of 31 and lows of 20. And in Eldoret, with clear skies this morning at 17 degrees, highs of 26 and lows of 14. In Kampala, mostly cloudy conditions, thunderstorms expected later with highs of 27 and lows of 21. And in Dar es Salaam, mostly cloudy conditions, rain expected with highs of 33 and lows of 25. And finally, in Lagos, partly cloudy conditions with highs of 34 and thunderstorms expected later and lows of 26.
.9 Spice FM, Mombasa.
Sugar and spice and everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
You tune into Kenya's biggest conversation, coming around to 21 minutes after 8 o'clock, and the conversation continues. We're going to take a skip and a hop to the continental US and look at what happened on what was a Super Tuesday, and seeing that the primaries are taking place, taking the country by storm and in full swing. With what we see coming out on the floor is that people are making a race for the top seat in the US and hoping for some kind of change when it comes about from President Trump. Now, we know that the man obviously survived the impeachment notion. He went to the floor of the Senate, and the Senate decided, no, this is not what we're going to call for at this point in time. We basically need him to stay in government. Now, come Tuesday, we see that Joe Biden is actually making a race and might, from what we see on all indications, might be the Democratic candidate for the presidential election, with what he's been able to do with his the closest contender being Mr. Sanders. Now, at this point, it seems that Joe Biden will come out on top with what we've seen coming out of the results of Super Tuesday, and at the same time, the United States trying to keep its borders closed to the now famous coronavirus. But at the same time, we hear sentiments from Trump continuing to talk about the fact that the United States still remains supreme. He sees himself as still going to be the next, continuing his term as president of the United States. And with all that we have in place, it seems that there's a teeter-totter on the place of balance for the United States now, and saying that, even in light of the coronavirus, with what we see happening in the primaries, a lot is being juggled, and the United States continues to lose, as far as I'm concerned, percentage points when it comes to its strength as a global power, with a leader who at most times, at best, shows his clever side of things, but not his intelligent side of things when it comes to being a leader. Unfortunately, what we see coming out of the US with the coronavirus is that he believes that the numbers are not as high as they say to be. He says they're actually less, and seems to keep a handle on things as far as their fight against this virus is concerned. Now, this has been the way in which he has dealt with a lot of things. Things are not as bad as they seem to be. And when it seems that a light is cast on what a particular situation would be, it comes out as fake news. And we see that the president has come out with fake news when it comes to the coronavirus yet again.
Ndu, can you hear me?
Now the Democrats are politicizing the coronavirus. You know that, right? Coronavirus. They're politicizing it. We did one of the great jobs. You say, how's President Trump doing? They go, oh, not good, not good. They have no clue. They don't have any clue. They can't even count their votes in Iowa. They can't even count. No, they can't. And this is their new hoax. But, we did something that's been pretty amazing. We're 15 people in this massive country. And because of the fact that we went early, we could have had a lot more than that. We will do everything in our power to keep the infection and those carrying the infection from entering our country. We have no choice. Whether it's the virus that we're talking about or many other public health threats, the Democrat policy of open borders is a direct threat to the health and well-being of all Americans. Now, you see it with the coronavirus. You see it. I also created a White House virus task force. It's a big thing, a virus task force. I requested $2.5 billion to ensure we have the resources we need. And so far, we have...
Yes, so... He said it doesn't mean that we will. We've lost nobody. But
when
then
was this? When was this speech made?
This was the day before Tuesday, and then Tuesday we saw that 6 people had actually died. Super Tuesday, and then
so they died after the speech.
Yes. They died after the speech. And this is the thing. I think at this point that it is clear that whenever Trump, who I think of all the leaders that the US has ever had, this man has a propensity to be able to call things as fake or a lie when he sees that there is a direct attack on him and his administration. And anything that comes contrary to what it is that he has put out there is a lie, or it is fake. But here we have California having then gone into a state of emergency and panic when one individual died. And then we saw the numbers get up to, what is it now? 15 deaths in the United States, whereas there were no deaths just the day before coming out of his mouth. And in another speech, of course, this clip that we got courtesy of the Times, hearing what it is that he did say, is very clear that he may not have a handle on things just as much as he would want to. And the manner in which he addresses his issues for a lot of people, which are global concerns, which are serious concerns, and then he's able to liken it to the fact that we can't even count our numbers of corona, making it seem that it's more than it actually is, and then talking about the fact that the state of Iowa cannot even count their Democratic votes. He's clever in the sense that he's able to draw parallels between the two, but not intelligent enough to see... Not intelligent enough to see that it is a lot more serious than he actually makes it out to be.
How clever really is a statement which can be disapproved barely 24 hours after you've made it? How clever is it?
This is the thing, and I'm saying at this point, you should point to the fact that, you know, this gentleman that sits at the leadership of the United States, at this point now, maybe people are beginning to see that it wasn't the best decision they made.
It isn't a question of beginning. It's a question of how do you state what you see without causing some waves. Remember, all the traits that have been attributed to President Trump, which are negative, have been and still are, and for the longest time whispered against African leaders, about African leaders, what they are. Meaning, they lie all the time. They cannot tell the truth. They are lewd. All these things have been exhibited by the president of the U.S. But what has then happened is that the media has done a tailspin in trying, well, some aspects of the media, in trying to explain it, in trying to give it nice clothing. The emperor is actually walking stark naked. And
right here.
And his statements are as clear as night and day, and some of them don't even require interpretation because the meaning is obvious and it's clear. But yet, meanings will be preferred to it, excuses will be given for it. It is, in the previous discussion we had with Mheshimiwa Farah Maalim, there are many things that the moment politics enters into it, it is phrased differently, the perception is twisted, it is turned, and yet, if you pause and look, the truth is not very difficult to see. It's not difficult to see at all, but everything and every effort is made for you not to look at that truth in the way you're looking at it. What is even worse is that the rhetorics that President Trump utters are favored by a large section of his community, and it is supported by a large sector of his community, and they believe these things.
How is it so easy for this group of people to believe these things that to the rest of the world are obvious in the opposite direction?
To people for whom, if you happen to be black, as in you're African, you cannot possibly come from a specific country. You come from the continent. Meaning, the specification of countries is lost on them completely. Are you from Africa? And saying, yes, but I come from a country called this. Okay, so you come from Africa. Now, I do. But I identify myself as a Kenyan. Now, it isn't even a negative sentiment if you think about it, because they have states that are essentially semi-autonomous.
But they're all American.
Precisely. And then they have something that is unique. You find it in Canada, you find it in Europe perhaps, but Europe had the advantage of colonization. But what you do find is this. You have a situation where, because people have everything they want within that narrow boundary that they live in, anything else outside there is actually of no concern to them. None whatsoever.
So you then need, this is why I call him clever in this sense, because he understood this and he knows what people have bought into, that they're not really concerned with anything else apart from the little nuclear unit that they live in. You know, everything that you need is provided for you. And he is aware of this and he's able to spin then whatever he would like to on their minds without, you know, bringing them to the reality that other things exist outside of this circle.
But
and he knows that, and that's how he's been able to make his strides.
Clever is not getting people to even understand how you think. Clever in politics is getting people to believe that you're something you're not. Clever is never exposing your underbelly. As the saying goes, you cannot tell which lizard has a stomachache because they all crawl on their stomachs.
You think they really don't know who he is? We're going to dissect this a little bit more. We're going to take a look at the traffic and come right back. Okay, so have things changed? Let's see. On Mombasa Road, still slow, but it's happening. Thika Road and Limuru Road today, a little bit slower coming into the city center. Right past Village Market, there seems to be a hold up, but it's a normal morning traffic that we would see. Inside, the roads inside seem to be causing problems. From Gong Road, there we have Naivasha Road, Kingara Road, Riara Road, where people are leaving the main Gong Road. Then the traffic snarl up happens there. In Westlands, people trying to get off of Wayaki Way, but then getting into Raptor Road and such places. It's a general nuisance this morning because it's taking your time then to get where you would otherwise get. The main highways that we're looking at, Uhuru Highway, coming off of Thika Road, Mombasa Road, Gong Road and Langata Road, not so bad this morning, trying to get in and out of the CBD. So it's a Friday morning, but people seem to be behaving. Anything happens out of the ordinary, do let us know. Spice FMKE, give us a shout on Twitter. Let's see how we can help, but at least shining your eyes in the right direction. Coming out of industrial area, we still have the problem. It's going to take a longer time getting to Jogo Road and then getting to the city center, but we understand what's going on, and it should take time if you exercise patience. Don't forget to let us know what you see, and we can spread the word.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
This is Kenya's biggest conversation in Nairobi, where you are listening to us. I'm Nduoko in the studio with CT Muga. Remember, the conversation does go on Twitter. CT Muga is handle Nduoko, and you can let us know what you think. And Spice FM KE as well. The conversation goes on our social media platforms. Looking at what's going on in the US, and this man, in terms of his being clever, I don't understand how he's able to convince Americans.
Where's the clever here? Explain.
The clever, because he's been able to he understands just the way you and I see it here. Many people have used other adjectives to describe how an entire group of people can believe a certain thing because of the fact that they don't have any added information coming out from the outside. And he's been able to stick onto that, knowing that these guys are not going to go out and dig for other information. So I can convince them of a particular thing because I understand the way in which they think, or in this case, not think.
If we're talking about cleverness, I would say the party is clever. I would say the party machinery is clever. I would say that those who advise him and those who are responsible for his electioneering are clever.
Do you think, as you see Trump now, that he's taking any advice on how to rule this,
Yes.
or how to, carry through this
Yes.
administration from other people? He seems to be a lone ranger, shoots from wherever he wants to shoot all over the place.
Look.
The advice that we see that, he's been able to get a pastor to come and pray along and for him in all his travails as we go along. But in terms of, he seems to be able to say whatever he wants, whenever he wants, carrying the support that he has from, the majority of the people.
Remember, he represents a certain thinking of a certain group of people. He didn't invent it. It existed.
That's what I'm saying, that he was clever in the
that's
sense that he was able to build on that. And he knows that
and
very
I'm
well.
saying clever I would attribute to the party, the electioneering machinery, not necessarily the man. Listen, the people who determined that this man should be the candidate are the clever ones, knowing very well, as you say correctly, he would appeal to a certain demographic. His utterances that many people find repugnant would find a welcome home within the boundaries of the thinking of very many people. You're talking about a country where there are people who are extreme rightists and they're heralded and they're praised. There are people who openly make racist statements and it is okay. There are people who are openly racist and again, it is okay. What's so clever? It is in the public domain. Even if you are blind, you would see it.
You know what he did though? Look at it now. What is happening with the primaries that are taking place? And we saw the results of Super Tuesday, where Biden came out and is the front runner. Of course, more is to happen. The campaign trail is still hot and heavy. But what did he say? The same way they're not able to count the numbers of the coronavirus is the same way they're actually not able to count in Iowa. And anybody who heard that would have been able to draw parallels between these two and say, absolutely. So you believe it, that you believe the narrative that corona is actually not in your country and is not a threat. At the same time, you believe that people are not actually able to count. So then it puts him right in the middle and squares him off properly as the one who's is going to be able to lead them to the solution. These guys can't count. They can't count whether we have a threat to our public health system. They can't count whether we're going to bring in a new candidate for the presidential elections. They can't count. So I am the one who is going to be able to help you. I think that's a brilliant piece of work.
Trump didn't choose himself. If his party machinery didn't want him, he would not have been a presidential candidate. I'm going back there. Through the element of control, because they saw this thing that he would be able to, they saw this thing in him that he would be able to use, saying things in a manner in which easily very few presidents before him could have done that. It's not him who is clever. If he were clever, he would use those very sentiments in a way that they wouldn't repel as many people as they do. We've had other Republican presidents. What makes you think they thought differently from the way Trump thinks? But you couldn't tell from the things they said, did, that they thought in that way. You aligned what they said to what they did. That's clever. So what they really think, you cannot possibly know. Now, if you want to understand that, there is a word that the English word teaches. It's called a euphemism. And the cousin to euphemism is nuances. Meaning, the situation as it is stated is perhaps less important than it is suggested. And the suggestion is the nuance, because unless you can get the meaning of the suggestion, you'll have missed the point. This man is not dealing in nuances. He's being blunt.
Oh, he's being blunt. He actually believes, first of all, I say that a lot of in this case, I don't think he's intelligent enough to use some nuances that then people would be able to understand and be able to see through. In this case, he believed that the numbers of corona in his country were actually less than what was being reported. And then a few days later, people died. Yesterday, we saw the number shot up to 15. He's able to tell people that actually it's not much of a threat. And then he's been quiet since then. The deaths that we see having occurred in the US, what?
Not only that,
he talks about
California,
the fact that they've declared a state of emergency.
Yes.
It's even
How
worse
is that
than you
not
actually
serious?
see it. How is it not serious? This is the thing. And I'm saying that the people that he's leading at this point, he knows, and he can feel it, the heartbeat of the people. He can feel that actually, you know what, I can say a couple of things here and I'm going to get a following and I'm going to get people to beat up even more support for me because of the way in which I say things that nobody else is bold enough to say. And I would think that he has an element of control in that because people are not often around him when he says the things that he does.
You know, Israel is shutting down. And in a very rare occurrence, the leadership in Palestine have had conversations with the leadership in Israel. And what has brought this discussion and what they've agreed on is the coronavirus. 7 people died in Bethlehem. Bethlehem has the Church of Nativity. It's a beautiful church. It's a really beautiful church. Now, that has been shut. At best, you can take pictures. 2 things are going to happen here, or 2 things have already happened. One, tourism, and that tourism or pilgrimage is a big money spender for both regions. People go there throughout the year and in large numbers, in the millions. And everything is paid for, whether you fly directly in or whether you go through Egypt, but people fly in. Now, if you're talking about this again, you want to look at a country like Portugal, where it is argued that tourism counts for at least a fifth of their GDP. So it means even in terms of employment, 1 in 5 people who are employed in that particular industry. Now you have a situation where, because of the coronavirus, restaurants and public places are being shut down. Now, where I'm going with this is, it is going to be a direct hit on the economy. Right now, they even found that somebody who exhibited manifested the existence of coronavirus in Beijing, they traced it back to the person who had visited Italy. Now, it's as though the epicenter of the coronavirus is shifting in terms of the narrative that you now read. Italy is taking the brunt of it. They are now shutting down schools. We have said it in this particular chat forum, and I am repeating it. When have we ever had a situation where there is a disease, an epidemiological disease becoming a nightmare and shutting down the economies of the planet? Because that's what's happening. It seems to be happening piecemeal, but it has to do with the speed with which those countries understand the reality of the virus. Second question, what is the reality of this virus that is bringing it to the position where everything shuts down? Human contact is shutting down. Human association is shutting down. Factories, because human beings run them, shutting down because they collect huge personnel together. The economy of the planet is shutting down.
Also,
as we see.
Right, the economy of the globe shutting down. We had seen that previously. The economy of the globe was suffering anyway. This seems to exacerbate the situation because country to country trade is not happening because of the fact, or it's not happening to the levels at which we had seen it before, because of the fact that borders have shut down. Italy shutting down, Iran shut down, China shut down a minute ago, not dealing with trade on any way, shape or form. I do agree. I mean, if we're going to go full blast into the coronavirus discussion now, I do agree that a lot is happening that was probably unprecedented. However, we still have some nations that are not telling the truth.
So where's the clever in this? When their own economy, the American economy, despite the intervention of the Reserve Bank, despite the government intervention, what they measure these successes has to do with their stock market. It's plummeting, not going down. It's plummeting, meaning that very economy which they thought was robust, it is anything but robust, unless you're going to call a downward slide robust. There's nothing robust about it. It is soon going to get to a stage where they're talking of shutting it down also. All you need to do is look. If California is not just a big economy in America, it's considered one of the biggest economies in the world. If you look at its size, California, a state of emergency. What do you think that portends for the other parts of the U.S.? Because of the head in the sand mentality, or at least as it's presented, you have a situation where you actually want to ask the question they asked of China. Are these numbers they're giving us, or the question they asked of the WHO, are these numbers they're giving us actually a true reflection of what's actually happening?
Well, now, if you look at what Donald Trump said, that the numbers that but his is in the opposite direction. He looked at the numbers that have been presented and he said, actually, you know what, this is a bit of an exaggeration. It's probably less than this. Against what the rest of the world is seeing, and then the next day we have deaths that have come in. Now, clever to say that his own people seem to be able, they have taken the narrative that he has presented hook, line and sinker. But the rest of the world that we see it as have seen that this guy actually is not really intelligent. Why would you do this? In the $3.8 billion is how much they have recently, as of yesterday, released to fight this thing in the continental US alone.
So essentially, he's fighting something which doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist. And of course, we know that they give the approvals. He is in the seat.
$3 billion towards something that you declared didn't really exist and wasn't a problem. $3 billion.
But understand, this budget only came through after the number 15 had been reached in terms of deaths.
How clever is that?
To his people, to people who vote for him. Very, very clever. So those of us who are on the outside watching...
Explain how clever again.
That you're able to control the minds of people to the point whereby they actually agree with you that actually, you know what, this is not so bad. But people on the outside are able to see, my friend, it actually is. It actually is. If you control people's minds, there's a way in which if you've been able to do it, that can only be clever. It's not a stupid move that you made to get so many people to follow you. It's definitely something that you did right as far as they're concerned, that you have the numbers that you see. They're not following you blindly. They believe there's something that you can offer to them.
Everything you've described clearly indicates that there's some blind following, some really genuinely blind following going on here.
According to us, absolutely. But for them,
if someone is predisposed towards believing something, and if you convince them to believe something, the clever one is that who actually convinces you. If someone is already predisposed towards a certain direction, what is clever about just going along with them?
We have to take a break now. We continue with these talks and seeing what's going on in the US and the proclamations that have been made.
It's one of those days, isn't it?
It is one of those days. We'll be back in a bit. The conversation continues.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
Is everybody all right? Fantastic.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent
Kenya's
talk.
biggest conversation in the Situation Room now, having shifted gears a little bit. Ndroko and CT Muga with you here and saying, is he clever or not in the way in which he has been dealing with the people of America and the narrative that he continues to push that, we still have a handle on things. And then coming across as, totally different when it comes to dealing with something like the coronavirus. Looking at what happened on Super Tuesday when he said, these Democrats, they really can't count in terms of they don't really know what's going on. Biden, nowhere. Sanders, okay. But then look at the overwhelming numbers that we saw of Americans coming out to vote in an unprecedented vote that happened, and then put Biden in the place where he was. So whether you're talking about coronavirus, whether you're talking about the primaries and votes, everything contrary to what this man has said. So I'm saying at this point it has become clear to very many people that the position that he has taken in the past is not what is the real situation on the ground.
Listen to the discussion we had on
losing his grip on things.
Contemplate the discussion we had with Farah Malim. How the people of northern Kenya suffer from Al-Shabaab. Is this really in the public domain? Have you ever seen an article that details how it is Al-Shabaab is harming the Kenyans who live in the northern part of the country? Anything detailing? No, we've had snippets of conversations. But this is a leader from that part of the world, and he's not the only one who has said it. People suffer. We've highlighted people who understandably don't come from that region suffering. Mm-hmm. There have been people who've blamed and said even the locals support them. But then there is the threat of Al-Shabaab that's constantly hovering around that entire landscape, which if you hear and if you listen to what is said and probably what isn't spoken, the influence is not small in any measure. It is a reality of that situation. And the noise that we're hearing that emanated from the MPs going to Somaliland, again, brings us back to this entire discussion. Someone who comes from there is more likely to understand what ails their people. He's even more likely to take a position that favors a certain narrative that favors his people. But it doesn't detract from the truth that there's something happening that the rest of the country doesn't know. Let's come back to America. You are not talking about the coronavirus in isolation of everything else that's happening in America. That he made fun of the Democrats, politically people do that all the time. Nothing unusual about it.
He made the link though.
He made the link, people lapped it up, they clapped. He knows the fertile ground that he's planting those seeds in. But the question that I am asking is this. When you say something whose balance of truth can, or lack of it, can be exposed in a very short time, that's definitely not being clever. Because even these people you think have an undying love for you or support may at some time pause. Case in point, I don't think there is any president of the United States who have, in the history of America, who have had the number of people Trump has who have resigned from positions of authority in government.
No.
It's like there's a race to resign. These are his supporters. These are people who are in his party.
Who came correct, as it were, if you want to put that in quotes, whatever correct may be, and realize, all right, I mean, they weren't provoked in any way. They just realized, the way in which things are going, we actually are not able to work like this. I will not continue to throw my support behind an administration that behaves in this manner. This is what you heard. A lot of people in their resignation letters, in their resignation proclamations, whatever it is.
But it didn't end there. The president immediately attacked them. Immediately they resigned. there was something negative that came out, or this person was this, wasn't fit, something negative. They haven't resigned and just had quiet. Others have even come up. Remember, there was this push to have one of them come up and give testimony as to why he was writing a book and why he was saying the things he was saying. Again, it is unusual. That's why I was saying, against such a backdrop, there is nothing clever, because the machinery you're setting in motion is beginning to fight you and you can't see it. From within the inner core, people who you feel and knew would support you, they are scampering and leaving the ship. What does it tell you about? This one isn't leaking. This one is sinking. Now, if you're talking about the voter can be fickle for you to a point that you can't even understand. And all they need to understand is that whatever you're doing is not in their interest. And this very same coronavirus will do it.
This could be the thing. This could be the straw that breaks the camel's back when it comes to, the furthering of leadership for Donald Trump. It could be. And I said before, coronavirus has presented so many opportunities around the world for things that were latent then to come to the fore. So what you're saying, CT, at some point is that, I could be interpreting here, but that people will realize maybe through this and the sentiments that have come up most recently that actually, this fellow could be leading us in the wrong direction when it comes to how we should be moving as a country. If you're going to be able to make the parallels between the two and say that, first of all, as he said before, these Democrats don't know what they're talking about. These individuals who are working for us, this news coming out of the media is fake news. Again, this coronavirus is fake. And then you have people dying in the very same country. Could open up or shed light on the fact that perhaps this gentleman is the one who is the problem.
Let's talk about something else that is of importance, something called climate change. People talk about it. It's now gained momentum. And if you look at why it has gained momentum, it's because the countries that seem to speak or have people speak it, they've understood it. Temperatures rising, places getting warmer by up to 3.5% warmer than it was been. Sweden had to import snow for their winter sports. Import snow. Something which you take for granted. Every winter, it's here. Russia has imported snow. Now, if you look at it, it's not just that. You go to Europe, what you'll also find is that something they call the wine harvest. Lives are being affected because the climate is getting warmer and warmer and warmer and warmer. The moment people's personal interests are affected, believe me, they'll do a complete about turn for you. If people start dropping dead in America, they'll go back to the statements that were originally made and said, there's nothing here, we've got it under control. They'll be asking, but people are dying. What do you mean you have it under control? And then it spreads. Remember, you can reach most parts of the state internationally. Meaning there are planes that will land in many parts of the U.S. internationally. You come from another country, land there. Here, you have to land at JKIA.
You have to land in Nairobi or Mombasa.
Nairobi before you go, and before you go, you go anywhere. So already it's contained. In America, think.
You can land in Los Angeles. You can land in New York. You can land in DC.
Take your pick, Houston. Take your pick. Take your pick where you can land. So if you're saying that this is a virus that is spread by people, and you're talking about the multi-ethnicity that you have in America, and you're talking about the movement of people for all sorts of reasons in America, these very dynamics that have been true of China and which have led to that problem, if you simply transpose it to America, that narrative may be the very thing that is going to kick Donald Trump in the teeth. Because the moment people feel their interest isn't being served, so far it serves their interest. Make fun of this, allow hate mongers to have their day, fine. The moment it stops, they'll do a complete turn and they'll turn on you.
And they've been able to counter this because, like I said, this money that has been released from the U.S. Treasury has been to counter this. We didn't see this kind of money coming out before. Coming out of Wednesdays when you saw, okay, this money been released to fight this thing at all costs. They were running around, tripping all over themselves, trying to find out then who had contact with patient zero in California, for example, putting up the systems in place, making sure that they were watertight, airtight, to be able to find out who these individuals were. In terms of the fight, they can still keep up the fight because everybody's common interest at this point in this case is to remain alive, first of all, not be infected and then not die when it comes to the coronavirus. Be able to make sure that that you stay alive. That's the interest. Now, when he says something like that and then comes the next day and counters it with the release of such money, saying, you know what, this is something that we actually have to do, then you see that, okay, he realizes this at the same time, realizes the damage that may have been done by saying something in the manner in which he did, and then coming out and saying, actually, you know what, we need to fight this thing. As small or as large as it possibly could be, we need to do something about this. I think that, you know, the whole idea of Make America Great Again was fantastic. The way in which he went about it, though, was what would cause problems. Now, the going about it is probably what will be his downfall in this case.
In the absence of the coronavirus, he'd be doing fine, because there would be nothing that is threatening the lives of people in such great numbers. Let's come back to Kenya and look at...
With the measures that they put in place, it would seem as if the US was the last place that an infection would occur, or that deaths would occur at all.
That has now become a myth because it's being punctured. If you look at our politics in Kenya, in the Jubilee, why did two parties decide to come together? They felt they would work together. Now, are you telling me that when people now supported the party, went to the party, that personal interest was not at play? It was. You hear the divisions. Again, it's interests. It's not as though there is some huge government policy that they support. Listen to the utterances. It is again self. You're looking at the division, and if you're looking at central Kenya, a lot of what you hear coming out of there, in my mind, is that benefits that were anticipated did not come. They didn't, and they kept not coming. So the question a politician asks, then why am I supporting this person? How is it of interest to me? How does it benefit me? But we will say it is influencing the development of our people. It is interfering with the lives of the common man. It's interfering with the lives of Wanjiko. It's interfering with the life of Mwende. It's interfering with the life of Chebet. It's always a lady who's the center of this. It's interfering with the life of Kadzo. It is interfering with the life of Atieno. Yes, I'm going through the rounds here. Yes.
I'm most doctorate Kadzo, but okay.
Yes, the coast had to be represented in this particular manner.
Always.
The thing is, the moment self-interest takes center, and the moment it is not being pandered or catered to, there'll be a turn around. Those who subscribe to the Christian faith will acknowledge it's the same crowd that was in Jerusalem that
escorted Jesus on the donkey. It's the same crowd that was then asking for his death.
And did it take place after 3 years?
Oh, we're talking about days.
Good. So, interest. Trump, this coronavirus is going to bring about changes on this continent that we had never anticipated, and even the smartest of pundits would never have guessed.
Changes in the world, I think, with the way in which, for something that would ordinarily have been so easy for the US to contain, then has become quite difficult. When we talk about opportunistic infections, this is an opportunistic one, because what it does is that it creates opportunity for many things to happen. Where we saw that opportunity was created in Kenya, for example, for people then to bring out their expressions of what they really felt about what was the Chinese invasion. Again, an opportunity for people to say, well, you know what, in America, if people start dropping off the earth like flies, then we're going to actually realize that our faith that we thought we had in the Trump administration is waning in some areas. An opportunity for many things to come to the fore, and for many truths that would otherwise have been hidden to actually come out and light be shed on them.
That's a lovely twist of the word opportunity. Good. Excellent.
I do try. Coming to the top of the hour, coming around about 9 o'clock, we're going to take a look at what is happening on the roads, and then we're going to shift gears a little bit in the conversation. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Join us as we do continue. spoke too soon. An accident happened a few minutes before Githurai, a few meters rather before Githurai, and emergency services asked to get to that part, slowing down traffic as well. You want to approach with caution or take it easy as you are in the particular area. Outbound on Thika Road, not so bad. Coming into the city centre using the Pangani underpass, we've seen things settle down a little bit around the city. Okay, so take a look at Mombasa Road now. It's okay. You can get where you're going rather smoothly. The traffic is not as bad as it was earlier. Coming out of Westlands, Langata Road. Very slow on Langata Road, but it's okay because you'll get there soon enough. Not as bad as we expect it to be right around this time. On Gong Road, we had a bit of a hold up between Naivasha Road, Dagoretti Corner, Riara Road, Kingara Road, all those junctions right there. But then outbound to the City Mortuary roundabout will not take you too long coming out from now. Okay, so it looks pretty good wherever we are. If you find an incident or see an incident or accident that you should let us know about, we can warn people in advance. Make sure that we're careful where it is that we're going today. Spice FMKE, reach us on Twitter. Let us know what is in your neck of the woods, or give us a call. Let us know what you see, and we'll spread the word.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up.
Listening to us in Nairobi and yes, around the world, online, Spice FMKE on Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. If you're tuned in on 94.4, that's where you'll be in Nairobi. Mombasa on 87.9, Nakuru on 96.0, Eldoret on 96.7 and 90.9 in Nyeri, 102.5 in Kisumu, and Malindi on 97.7. You can continue with the conversation on our social media handles, Twitter and Facebook, and tag us on CT Muga and Ndu Oko this morning. Now, bringing things home with the coronavirus, it has come out of the Ministry of Health that everything is on course and everything is A-OK when it comes to dealing with corona. All the measures have been put in place. The quarantine facility is going to be, today's Friday, isn't it? Yes. The quarantine facility going to be ready today. The beds that we're talking about, the procurement that needed to have happened, everything seems to be on course. And City, I see you smirking already because you don't really believe that. But yes, we've been told that as far as measures being put in place, we are fine and we're in a position to fight this virus should it make its ways into the borders.
Words.
The isolation ward at Bagadi is going to be opened today. Let me just give you some information. It was set to be one of the measures to prepare the country to combat the virus. It will be unveiled today. 120 bed capacity isolation ward. It has been equipped as per the executive order last week. Let me tell you, if anything, that's what an executive order can do. Things can happen with such speed and alacrity. This has been set up. It's going to be unveiled today. Of course, there'll be fanfare, I am sure. The Kenya Association of Pharmaceutical Industries has assured the public that the spread of the virus, that while the spread of the virus has posed a major health threat affecting transport, measures have been put in place to ensure no shortage of medical supplies is going to be experienced. They don't expect this to happen. Of course, we see that, China being a supplier of many antibiotics and supplements, this is not going to happen. They've put in place measures to make sure that they're able to get this from other areas. The virus has spread to 61 countries, not in Kenya yet. And counties have also set up, or rather they've been told to set up to set up emergency centers at all level 4 and 5 hospitals. So,
Words.
it's okay.
What's okay?
The work that needs to have been done has been done.
How is this news any different from what we heard when they first talked about it? The only difference is one statement will be unveiled. Has it been unveiled? No.
No. Usually things happen at 10 o'clock. So it's 9 o'clock.
Look,
Maybe by 10
I
o'clock
will
it will be
personally
unveiled and we'll have a look.
When it has been unveiled and there's a clear report of the measures that they've been discussing, visibly seen, not talked about, visibly seen. It's there. There are pictures of it. One can see it and they can explain this is what we're going to do. Before then, just words.
They said they're going to train. It was 615. I think now the number was raised to almost 800 health workers around the country. Training has taken place on the coronavirus and then how to handle it if you should come in contact with somebody who is suspected to be infected. Can we just say that their words along the line this whole time? Maybe they've actually done the due diligence. Executive order came out last week.
When we made orders,
executive order came out last week, CT, and then we saw that
school children procurement processes even took place. We even know it's a public domain in the media. Companies that were awarded those tenders. What was consistent is payments made, but it wasn't consistent with computers that were received. So the whole program of computerizing primary schools, etc., one could argue if one wants to be kind, is a work in progress. Okay? The promises that were made clearly. Let me take it to a national level. Mimi miaka kumi, Ruto miaka kumi. Those are words that were uttered. Right now, at the heart of the debate, things that didn't require further interpretation. We see a situation where we're saying, Akuna deni. I first thought, who owes who? Then it was, no, that promise was never made. It was made. It was in the public domain. It was made. Let's come back to the present. We are now saying that we had a problem with 11 MPs from northern Kenya visiting Somali. No one knew. They went against. A day later, forget what Mheshimiwa Farah Malim said. It is again the public domain. The speaker says, no, there was no hassle there. All I'm saying is, this is the backdrop against which you believe what you see, and even then doubt it a little bit. If they are saying, look at the utterances that we've made. Look, we are not immune. We are not exempt from people from the other country having visited us within this period before we supposedly put barriers. We had theoretically cancelled all flights from China. What did you see? What did you see? They were cancelled, we're told. What did you see? We saw 239 people on a Chinese airline landing in this country. And what did we hear? They can self-quarantine. Okay. Now, against that backdrop, we had a situation in this very week when we're told everything is in place. And yet the money to actually provide things to ensure this battle had not been released. Have you heard mention in this article you're reading about, have you heard mention of money being released? Talk.
Do you think that people are going to joke around with this thing with the seriousness that wait now, CT, with the seriousness that we have seen the rest of the world take this thing on with? Executive order. It's not just, some handsy-pansy talk that the president had somewhere. He made an executive order and said certain things can be done. Do you think people want to play around with their jobs and actually not have something done?
If they told me the National Youth Health Wing had been mandated with doing this and ensuring that these hospitals met the standards, I would say, this one looked like. Because you know why? When we were burying our former president, the National Youth were tasked with beautifying the stadium and making it ready. They made it ready. And it was spanking. So if you attach that activity to a body that is known to actually do what they say they're going to do, I wouldn't even go ahead and say, good, it's done. Remember, it doesn't stop with Mbagathi and Kenyatta. It's supposed to be in level 5 hospitals in counties around the country. If at the national level it isn't ready, what makes you think the counties are going to be ready?
So I see you think we're dancing around this thing, we're joking with it. No?
We're doing what people in authority tend to do. They talk at issues, they throw words at it, so you get the impression they're doing something.
But it's in the newspaper, so it must be true, CT.
It's in the newspaper because the newspapers report. But have you seen them saying it will be? They're hoping it will be unveiled today. We're waiting. When it's unveiled, the conversation will automatically change. It has been unveiled. So what do we see with the unveiling? You say it's ready. So what exactly is ready? I, again, on this very program, I've said we must learn to question the things we read and understand what is being said. I've read this article 4 times. 4 times. Some of the questions that arose earlier on have not been addressed. All they're saying is that it will be done. We're hoping it will be done today. It will be done. And that is a common statement with any issues. We had a situation again with the locusts.
They told
No aerial spray. Ground spray.
It's not available.
Yes. And now we're saying don't eat them because we've had aerial spray. Now, when you're buffeted with all these ups and downs and conflicting states all the time, what exactly are you expected to believe and hold on to?
Are we talking about a case that is just akin to Kenya as a country, or we're looking at sub-Saharan Africa? Because look, in the US, when they've told them,
Since
they
when
kind
is
of
sub-Saharan Africa part of Kenya?
No, I'm saying, are we looking at Kenya and sub-Saharan Africa? Because if you hear what it's coming out of Nigeria, for example, or coming out of Cote d'Ivoire, when they talk about measures having been put in place, people are like, I beg, which measures? They actually don't believe that this is the case, right? But look at the countries, look at the US, for example, $3.8 billion, and they've told their people, we have put in everything required to make sure that we fight this disease. Somehow the people of the United States seem to believe them. Why don't you believe that, the government has done what it needs to? Measures have been put in place. Adequate supply of drugs, if needed, have been brought in, because we see that because of China is known as a major manufacturer of generic drugs, among them antibiotics and supplements. However, because of the virus, countries are now anticipating a shortage as a result of restriction on travel and transport. But we don't expect any long-term impact on availability of medicines and vaccines unless disruption due to the novel virus is sustained over the next several months. So for the next several months, they have adequate supply. They don't expect that it will go further than that.
The suggestion in that that piece, that article is misleading. The largest producer of generic drugs is India.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happens in China will not really affect the supply of drugs. That's misinformation. Yes, they are implying that because China has this lockdown, suddenly we will not have enough drugs. Not true. Not true at all. Look, you asked a question and I will answer. If we have problems with flood victims, we're talking about last year, not this year. We have problems with schools last year. We have a problem with locusts. None of these have been resolved conclusively. But we've heard a lot of words. We've had a lot of things said. There's a back and forth. The pesticide isn't there. It is there. No aerial spray. Don't eat the locusts. They've been sprayed. These are old locusts. Don't worry. They will die. These animals are very organized. They only die when they've reproduced. And when they reproduce, they're not reproducing 2 children. It's in the tens and hundreds of thousands. So these aren't people these aren't animals you joke around with. Now, again, the same government. We have a situation now with diseases outbreak. We had a lucky break with HIV. Lucky in the sense that it was funded heavily. Kenya was one of the largest recipients of PEPFAR money. Now, that went swimmingly until the funding got cut. The problem we have with blood in this country right now and the supply of it has to do with us being caught flat-footed and flat on our bottoms because we were told this money was going to be reduced. Somehow we thought it was just a conversation. We thought these people are like us who just talk about things.
And it's not serious.
They're not like us. They actually do what they have said they're going to do. We suddenly find the funding was not there. We had been told. Now, surely, against this backdrop of the choice examples that I have given, when someone then now tells me that this particular, the hospital, by the way, exists. They're not building a new one.
They're not building a new hospital.
It exists.
It exists.
They're just demarcating a part of the hospital for this particular. That's all they're doing. Beds that you require for hospitals are found in the country. Most of the basic ingredients that are required to ensure that there's safety are manufactured in the country. Here, in this country. For some reason, this connection between the funds being available, equipment being ready, it hasn't been made. We had this discussion last week. We are on to a new week. We're now being told it will be unveiled today. Surely you will understand if I say I need to see it unveiled.
CT is a doubting Thomas this morning, and he needs some kind of evidence to show that this is actually the case, because apart from that, it's just words. We ask the question again, satisfied that all has been put in place, measures have been put in place to make sure that we're fighting this virus tooth and nail before it actually makes an entrance into the country. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We continue after the short break.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, we'll take a look at what's happening on the roads right now. Looking much better around the city. Not much of an issue today. Coming off Mombasa Road, a lot better than it was before, and no complaints as such. People are behaving. It's a Friday, so it's a good way to start the weekend. Unless something major happens that we don't quite anticipate, do let us know. Spice FM KE or 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
And we're looking again, being a Friday, looking at preparedness for anything that might happen as far as infections in the country. If the coronavirus then makes an appearance in Kenya, are we ready for it? CT, looking at the few cases that we may have seen in the country that was suspected, it didn't happen, right? And it seems that with the quarantine that's happening, there seems to be a handle on things. Cases that would have been suspected to be one thing or another turned out not to be. Can we then say that even with the few or little that we have, it's not being taken care of?
If clouds build up today, it doesn't rain. Do we then take the view it's never going to rain?
No, it's going to rain, of course. And look, we've already admitted that in this case, it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when. And the few suspected cases that we've seen, the few scares that we've had now here and again, hasn't it been something that has been taken care of?
Taken care of how exactly?
I mean they've been able to test. The tests were done. People were released.
Yes.
We're saying if there's an influx, we're not going to be able to deal with the numbers.
It's not even influx. This thing doesn't begin. Look, we talked about Italy. The issues around Italy and the issues around the coronavirus in Italy are not even 2 weeks old. Right now, there's a leap by 50%. 50. it is reported in our dailies that Italians are leaving. Over 600 Italians who had come in. The tourist visitors in this particular country, 70% of tourists who visit Malindi and Watamu are from Italy. They've left because, one, many of them, it is reported, feared that there was this, with the disconnection of flights from Italy to Kenya, some of them felt that perhaps, and it extended beyond their stay here, they felt it might be safer for them to go home. Italy has closed down schools, universities, colleges, public meetings, closed because of virus. A month ago, Italy had no issue with virus. A month ago.
But didn't they only did this after they saw that some
and we
cases
must wait
came
and
into
follow
the
the example and wait until people start dying for us to take action.
This is what the argument could be, that do we need to go into that state?
Does
I
that
mean,
ar- does
I
that
am the
argu-
one.
Does that argument make sense to you?
I am the one who has said there should be panic, and people or not panic, but that there should be some certain attention that is given to this across the board. We should be ready and waiting in case something does happen. We should be ready when it does occur. But at the same time, could it be that from the eyes of the government or from the eyes of those agencies that have been put in place, they're saying, well, you know what? We can't really do anything until we are faced with the situation. We can have the beds and such ready. We can have the drugs and such ready. But then at this case, we must wait. Isn't it? Right? We can do everything that we need to do. Put the measures
Just
in place.
repeat what you've just said and listen to yourself.
No.
And
but
then
look,
ask the question again.
they
as
can
you've asked it.
unveil these beds in hospitals. They can make sure that they have adequate supply of drugs. They can make sure that across county level 4-5 hospitals, they have an isolation or quarantine center. What are they then supposed to do until a case comes?
We haven't even indicated and demonstrated our preparedness. How then can we answer the question you're asking?
Yeah, but I mean, executive order has been given. You have seen, they've said, like, for example, the unveiling is going to happen today. They have adequate supplies of drugs. They've done what they need to do. How do we test it? And how do we test it and see whether these things are actually working, whether they've actually been established, until you have a case that has presented itself in the country? That's the argument that could be given.
We are not inventing the coronavirus in Kenya.
No.
Okay. It exists elsewhere, and there are people who we can now refer to as experts because they understand the virus more. The question that we asked a while back was, what is it about this virus? We are told that Chinese scientists have now been able to determine that there are two strains of the virus. One more ingenious and corrosive than the other. My words, okay? That's called progress. The pharmaceutical giants whom President Trump called to White House to discuss these things told them that the earliest they will probably have an antidote, the earliest they'll have a vaccine is in how many months?
18 months is
Precisely.
what they said.
So, everything about this that we know tells you that you are better off being prepared so that when it comes, at least the one thing that doesn't happen, it doesn't get you unprepared. Now, the other things that have to do with ensuring you mitigate against it, that is part of the preparedness. And we know what needs to be done if we take best practices from countries that are dealing with it. Healthcare systems in countries that are developed are being taxed and tested just by the sheer numbers. Because remember, it's not as though the other diseases that our hospitals deal with have suddenly paused and given the new coronavirus a free ride and said, please go along and do your thing. No, they're there. So the healthcare system will be strained. Look, let me take you back to something I know a little bit more about. The work around HIV. Part of the reason why a lot of this funding was given was to ensure that not only were people trained, but there was adequate. You had ARVs, but in addition to antiretrovirals, you also had medication that would take care of opportunistic diseases, meaning the healthcare system was fully equipped and supplied. People were trained, and then whatever was needed to fight it off pharmaceutically was provided. For. But the training had two components to it. One was to ensure that you have a cadre of employee who would then be able to take over these services within a government setting, not necessarily donor funded and supported. People who worked in that field demarcated such people with the understanding that over a period of time and understanding that there will be a reduction in funding, these individuals would get absorbed into government, but they would have had that special training and practice of managing patients with HIV. Guess what? When the fundings got lowered and the funding couldn't pay these people directly. Do you really imagine that all these people got absorbed by the county governments? The answer is no.
Of course they didn't. They had to let some people go.
Precisely. And you think that the threat of HIV suddenly went with the funding? It didn't. What I'm trying to say is, again, best practices means also learning from things that have happened and things that are likely to happen. That's part of best practice. Now, we have a situation where we're dealing with a virus. We know what viruses do. We know they have no cure. This one, it's like a big screen where we can see the drama of the coronavirus right across the globe. We're seeing it in every day. If you are seeing it, and then you seem to assume that it won't get you, fallacy, and if I may say so, I know this is open radio, stupidity of the highest order.
To think that it won't get you. I don't
Yes.
think that is the case, though. That I think we've passed that. I think at some point,
Who is we?
I think at some point, officials who then had the power to do something about this, to put the measures in place, actually didn't feel that it would get here. That so far has changed because the realization that it's getting closer and closer to home. But going with the narrative that the test is in the taste, that until you're able to, you can't be really tested about this thing, about whether you have put enough measures in place or adequate measures in place to make sure that something is being done. You're going to find, CT, that is the thing. Until this thing gets into the countries when you'll be able to tell whether these things that they've put in place or not put in place are actually going to work. They can do them and talk about it from here until next year. They've told us that this will be unveiled today. Then until
So
a case comes in that is
all
good,
these
it
examples that we're
could
seeing
be...
from the rest of the world are useless. There's nothing to learn from them.
There's a lot to learn from them,
So
but
why-
are we learning from them? A lot of them came as a result of them having seen it come to their front door. They put measures in place, but some of the things that they then did after was with the existence of it right there in their space. The shutting down of schools, for example, didn't happen in Italy until we saw the numbers get to where they got. The shutting down of schools in Japan and the talk about, the shutting down perhaps the Olympic Games didn't come about until we saw an increase in numbers. They had cases in their countries.
So we must wait and follow these bad examples that we're seeing. Is that what you're saying? That we must follow these terrible examples that we're seeing?
This is not what I'm saying. I am saying that the test comes at the point where you're actually
What
tasting
you're saying
the thing.
is exactly what you're saying you're not saying.
Put the measures in place. That is absolutely necessary to do. But from what I see, that the agencies tasked with this executive order, putting them in place, are actually kind of just waiting around for something to happen. And until something happens, yes, they're going to tell you that they've put up a hospital. They're going to tell you that they have adequate resources in place. But until something actually happens in this country, that is when you're going to see people scrambling around. All this executive order, all of this talk is just that. They're going to wait until... Look, I'm telling you, CT, they are going to wait until you have one confirmed case. And that is how they're going to be able to test whether these measures that they've put in place are actually adequate. Before that, they're not going to do anything more than tell you that a hospital has been unveiled or that there's adequate resources in terms of drugs. They're not going to do anything more. And you've buffered that sentiment too by saying that, historically, when have they ever done anything? They're not going to do anything more than that until now. And we can sit here hoping, tongue in cheek, that something actually happens. But not more is going to happen. They'll say, okay, yeah, maybe we have 2 or 3 beds at county level, 4 and 5 hospitals. But they're not going to do anything more. Come and tell you that we've done more than what we said we're going. No, they won't. Until something happens is when you're going to see a real change. Until the first case, not even suspected, until the first case is confirmed, that is when you're going to see people running around. It's just by nature of the way we do things. It's just because of the way in which we do things. Until the rubber hits the road, that is when you'll start to smell. Before that, sorry, it's not going to happen. They're not going to do anything more. And I'm sorry to dash your hopes, but that's just the way it is, CT. It's not going to happen.
I actually even don't understand. How exactly would you be dashing my hopes?
You're saying that, more needs to happen and that we need to make sure,
No.
we need to see,
No.
we need to actually see.
No.
We need to actually see the
Yes,
evidence
I
of
am
what they have
saying
said.
I need
You won't
to
see.
If I don't see, then the status quo remains the same for me.
You're going to see
It's words.
you'll see it today.
When
You'll see
I
the
see the
hospital
unveiling-
of the hospital and you say, something is being done.
Let
right?
me repeat what I said.
But until you see an infected case in this
It's clear.
country,
I
it
think
will not be clear
you
that
misunderstood what I
enough
was
has
saying
been
then.
done.
What I said was, when I see the wards, I will ask for the questions and ask what Have you equipped it? Okay.
So even when you see the unveiling, you won't be satisfied.
Well, that's just a building being ready with beds. What else do you think that is? Hospital with a room or rooms with beds and the equipment. Okay. For this particular virus, what are the things that are required that would meet the threshold of preparedness?
And whether you're happy or not that they're actually in place.
This isn't a question of happiness. This is a question of belief. I need to see it to believe it. And even when I see it, I'll not believe everything I'm being told about it. I will ask even more questions. With everything I see, I will raise the threshold of questions. That is what I am trying to say.
And I'm saying that those questions will not be answered until you have a real situation that people need to deal with.
Actually,
unless the narrative changes and unless all history can then be proven wrong, until an infected case finds its way into this country.
This particular situation may be different in that healthcare workers are not immune from the disease. No one is. So the seriousness with which such a thing will be taken will be a notch higher. These aren't locusts.
No?
No.
All right, let's take a break and look at the weather and come back and continue with that. When the phone lines will be open and you can share what your sentiments are with us. This is Kenya's biggest conversation in the Situation Room with Ndu Oko and CT Muga. We continue in a bit.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Chilled Spice.
21 degrees in Nairobi and mostly cloudy. That's what it's going to be through the day with highs of 24 and lows of 16. In Nyeri, currently at 21 degrees. Light showers expected later with highs of 27. In Malindi at 31 degrees. Going to be a warm day with highs of 35 and partly cloudy through the day. 29 degrees in Mombasa and mostly sunny with highs of 32 and lows of 27. In Nakuru at 20 degrees, mostly sunny with highs of 28. Kisumu at 23 degrees. We'll see clear skies through the day with highs of 30 and lows of 21. In Eldoret, clear and sunny skies as well with highs of 26 and lows of 14. In Kampala, mostly sunny this morning with highs of 27 and lows of 21. Thunderstorms expected later on in the day. 29 degrees in Dar es Salaam. Rain coming in later with highs of 33 and lows of 25. In Johannesburg at 18 degrees, it's mostly sunny. Clear skies expected through the day with highs of 25 and lows of 11. Wrapping things up in Lagos at 28 degrees. It's rain throughout the day with highs of 34 and lows of 26.
Are you ready? Okay.
Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
We're opening up the phone lines on 0719-012-600. We've had this conversation about corona over and over and over again and talking about the preparedness of a government to be able to deal with this. We saw that with the executive order that came from the president last week, Friday, that certain things needed to be done. We saw the formation of a committee. We saw the edicts given out for county level 5 and 4 medical facilities to be set up. We're going to see the unveiling of the isolation center or isolation ward at the Bagavi Hospital today with 120 bed capacity.
We will see.
And now, Titi, they're not lying. They're not lying in this case. Said they'll do it. They'll do it now. We'll see a ward.
Why don't you wait and see when they do it?
We'll wait and see when they do it
Yes.
later on in the day today. We're hearing from you. Enough being done. Are we told? Are we convinced that it's enough? The people of Kenya have a buy-in to this, want to feel safe and know that the government has done enough to make sure that measures have been put in place.
No, I feel very unsafe actually.
You feel unsafe?
Oh, completely. the government's attitude towards prevention should leave you scared. Because if the coronavirus hits as you're suggesting, it'll be disastrous.
All right, let's hear from Moses in Eldoret. Moses, good morning.
Hello.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Yes. Tell us what you think.
saying
Do you
that,
feel safe? Yes.
No, I think the government should maybe look at the borders and make sure that they test everyone that gets into the country before they get into the country. They might be tested, then maybe be left to enter the country, because even the neighbors that we have, like Uganda and Tanzania, maybe they get through the borders just like that without even having the test.
Right.
So yeah, that makes us puts us in a big maybe.
You don't feel that enough has been done, Moses, to make sure that when there is a case in this country that it will be taken care of and the rest of the population can be safe?
You know that virus, you can't know if someone has it. So those people who are getting through the borders, someone might be passing through with it from the other places.
Okay.
So the first thing the government should do is to make sure that they test each and everyone. To get those test kits, if they're there, then they have to maybe test the people who are getting into the country. If they don't test them, because if they don't test them, maybe someone might be passing with it into our country. Maybe
and we don't know.
So those measures are the ones that we want to hear as the people of this nation. But what they're saying that they have put the beds, that means that they are ready for that disease to get into our country, which as the Kenyans, we are not ready for it.
Okay. All right.
So we want them to take good measures to make sure that those people who are coming from the other countries, they get tested first
before they are allowed
in. Then they get into our country.
All right.
Because we've heard that people are passing through the borders of Somalia just like that, and you see, our borders are the places that the country must look at very well. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Moses. Asante sana. All right, we're going to hear from Louis in Kisumu. Louis, good morning.
Hello.
Hello, Louis. Good morning.
Yeah, you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, I wanted to contribute to the debate.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah. First, I'd like to mention the speaker you had in the morning, the former speaker. Yeah, I thank you for holding him to account. But the body language was different from the love of Kenya and the love of the other countries.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's up to him, and it's up to the entire community to convince the rest of the country
of the same.
That what they say is what they mean. Yeah, and the same thing also in the Donald Trump situation.
Yeah.
I think if there's any African in America, it must be Donald Trump.
You agree with CT on that?
Yeah.
So tell us about Corona. What do you think? Are you safe?
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm saying is just to congratulate you and encourage you to continue talking about that disease, because it has a potential of wiping out the entire humanity. So talk about it every day. Don't get tired. So that's all my comments. Thanks, sir.
Thank you so much for that, Louis. Asante sana. Zachary in Nakuru, good morning.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Zachary.
Oh, hi, Walib.
Salama.
And let me congratulate you for the good proverbs. I'm using them in some quarters.
Yes.
I want a commission.
Sure. And now what I'm looking at,
yes.
I'm looking for a dye now to dye my hair to look white so that I look very much sage, okay?
Oh, and wise, right, of course.
Now, what do you...
Yes.
What you do next is now to start teaching us the Queen's words, like soliloquy, like, all those words, quintessential, those...
Soliloquy. Quintessential.
Quintessential, those words, that will make us at least appear somehow learned in front of our friends.
So
Okay?
Alongside the proverbs, a few heavy-sounding words.
Sure. Now,
a heavy-sounding word, Zachary. Tell us about Corona from your neck of the woods.
Sure. Now, Pastor, I also congratulate you about the former guest we had. That guy is knowledgeable, Mr. Mari Muhammad. And if he is hearing, let him know that he has Pala Malim, Yes. So, now on the issue of coronavirus, Mwalim, you know what I've resorted to doing?
Tell us, please.
I told you that there was a red cup that I was brought on 14 there. And we decided that we anonymously decided with our, with my frequent that we isolated,
Yes.
And we had decided that we are going down to keep our ears alert. We were to unveil it at around the 20th, so that both of us can drink from it. And now we have seen the way we are getting things, the news from the US and from about coronavirus.
Yes.
We have postponed the unveiling. Now let me tell you.
So you're taking measures on a personal level.
On a personal level, actually, and I started that. I think that one. You can now. That one. I'm special. Let me tell you. Anybody who is following the coronavirus issue should be telling everyone goodbye.
Oh wow! Okay.
Why?
I'm telling you the truth.
As drastic as that.
Yes, like now I'm calling my aunts, telling them go goodbye if we don't meet in 2021. Because the way that things are being held here in Kenya is not serious.
Okay.
You see, and I came to know it when the guy who photographed a plane landing here from China was terminated. His services were terminated, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, but he's been restored now. But so I just want to hear from you very quickly on this, because I want to hear from some other people as well, Zachary, that, is enough being done? And are you confident that enough has been done to make sure that we're stemming this thing?
The answer is no, and that is why I'm saying goodbye to everybody that I know, and even you, I'm saying goodbye to you.
Okay, and then we will talk again at a later date. Thank you very much, Zachary, for that.
Thank you.
All
Have
right.
a nice day.
Thank you. You too. We're going to hear from Kennedy in Mombasa. Kennedy, good morning.
Thank you.
Hello. Hello, Kennedy. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes.
Now, before I could contribute on coronavirus, I would point out on Farah, who has been there on the show.
Yes.
Farah should be able to understand anybody that is between 50 years and above must have seen the invasion of Somalians coming in. So he could not claim that we don't have Somalis.
They're all refugees, he says.
They are not refugees. A very simple example I can point out. There is a chanjo that always Kenyans wanapewa kwenye mikono. If you find a Somalia that is above the age of 30 years and above, look at his hand. He doesn't have the chanjo. So it means he's not a Kenyan. Now these people have IDs. It's very easy to identify a Somalian that claims he's a Somalian, Kenyan born, but he's not a Kenyan born. All Kenyans that are born in Kenya have some change on their hands.
Yeah.
These Somalis don't have.
All right.
Yeah.
But there's a point you want to make. I want to understand it.
Yeah.
So you're saying that there was an invasion of Somalis into Kenya?
Yeah, during the Moi regime. In fact, during the Moi regime, that is when they were given IDs, in fact, to vote.
So what you're saying that the case is that all Somalis in this country are not necessarily refugees, and that's the point.
Yeah, that is the point. In fact, majority of them.
So how do you have evidence to support this view?
It is very simple. Take a Somali that is 40 years old, 10 of them, take them for inspection. Look at their hand for chanjo. You will find there is none.
Okay, so can we take a skip over to Corona at this point and see what it is that you feel about measures that have been put in place or not put in place in the country?
Now, for Corona, it is very simple. The government has done nothing.
Oh, has done nothing at all? Okay.
It has done nothing at all. You're supposed to quarantine people, you leave them to get into the country. You have enough money to do that, but you can't do it. So the government has done nothing. We are being taxed day in, day out. A lot of money, but nothing is being done. So Kenya has done nothing completely. Completely nothing.
Thank you for those sentiments, Kennedy. Asante sana. We will continue with that. Thank you so much for calling in.
Okay, karibu sana.
Asante. So that's what we hear. We'll keep taking your calls on 0719012600, hearing from you about the measures that have been put in place by the government so far. They've told us that certain things will happen. We hear that they're adequately prepared, but I'm saying that until we see something actually happen, we will not be able to test this preparedness until it actually happens. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll continue with your phone calls and hearing from you when we come back after the short break.
.6 Spice FM, Malindi. Welcome to Spice FM, the best exclusive radio station bringing you the best mix of the best music ever. Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
0719012600. A couple of you trying to call in. Call back to hear. We would like to hear what you say. It's interesting to get, a rounded view of what people feel generally, that enough has been done to contend with this threat that we see coming and knocking on the doors. But I'm saying that even with the measures that have been put in place, we're not going to be able to see whether truly there has been adequate preparation done. The test is in the taste here. Until it happens, you won't be able to see all these measures having been put in place, whether they're adequate or not, unfortunately.
It sounds like naysaying, and it sounds to be like the one. Well, one could even say it's completely unpatriotic. It isn't. The truth cannot be unpatriotic. You see, when the health of an entire nation is under threat, it then moves from being a health issue to a security issue. So if something that is inadequate or something that can convincingly be referred to as inadequate or adequate is not in place, then one could say that the state is being careless with the lives of its people. It's there to ensure that the lives of these people are looked after.
All right, well, let's hear from Timothy in Kisumu. Timothy, good morning. Hello.
Hello, morning.
Good morning, Timothy.
Good morning.
Yeah, I'm calling from Kisumu.
How are things in Kisumu?
We are very good, and I'm saying our government have tried, and on my side, I think we are safe,
We're safe.
In that we know our fate already, we are likely to die.
Oh my God! So this is not a.
Now we are only preparing as Christians that when we die, we see Christ, we don't die again.
Okay.
But I would say government is trying. You see, they are doing something. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We're going to hear from Otieno in Nairobi. Otieno, good morning. Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Otieno. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And yourself?
Okay, let me only talk about coronavirus.
Okay.
The only issue which is going on is that this belief that African cannot get it.
And that's a lie, according to you.
I don't know. I can't say much about it because I'm not conversant with it.
Yes.
Though it is a fact that it has never been reported that it has affected anybody who is more Africanized.
Yes.
Yeah, and this thing, I think it has infiltrated amongst the leadership in this country, and now they don't care. So let's wait and see. If it will attack, we will handle it from there. If it won't, then the theory will come to pass.
Okay, well, that's interesting. Thank you very much for your call, Otieno. Asante Sana for calling in.
Thank you.
So, I mean, here's the thing, CT. Do we wait and see? This is sentiment that comes from a number of people. Well, let's wait and see, and then we can be able to prove certain theories.
All these things would be very interesting and even more interesting discussion if it didn't involve human lives. And if it didn't involve a situation where you can actually avert these deaths, or you can limit it to a bare minimum that you simply say it's the sort of attrition that happens in life anyway. People don't kick a fuss about malaria because you see the attempts that have been made to ensure people don't die from malaria.
All right, well, let's hear from Peter. Peter, good morning.
Hello.
Hello, Peter, good morning.
Morning, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Very fast on the computer, I'm very well.
Say hi to CT.
Now. Hi, CT.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, I tried to reach you from Eldoret, but I could not get you through, but I'm in Nairobi now.
Oh, so you've moved, imagine that you moved from Eldoret to Nairobi to be able to call in.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Karibu
Now, let's go very fast to Georgia. Let me just comment something before I go to the coronavirus. Americans' presidents have been lying all through, all the way from Franklin Roosevelt to Truman to Nixon to George Bush to Bill Clinton. So Americans are used to their president lying and they support him. So for me, this guy lying to us and saying that there's nothing and then it comes to be there, it's not a big deal to us. It's not a big deal. Just that, it's not a big deal. They're just used to that. American presidents are known to be lying. Now, this coronavirus, for me, the much you can do, as Doko is saying, when the virus is here, we will know what to do by then. But for now, all we can do is just have what the government has done. Prepare for maybe a war like it has done. But before it comes here, there's not much we can do. That's all we can do. When it comes, we will jump the river then. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Peter.
Yeah.
Well, there you go, CT. Until it happens, what can we do? We can put up the beds, we can put up the wards, but then it's basically waiting. You can have water in the tank to fight the fire, but until the fire comes, then really what are you going to do?
People about the virus and getting them to understand. If we'd never had an epidemic, if we'd never had a situation where people were dying from a disease they didn't fully understand, or from an attack from a virus they didn't understand, we've set out to inform them. You don't stop informing. Right now, a lot of people are ignorant about the virus.
Oh, look, I'll be first to admit there's a lot that is going out. Some things I even want to put my hands over my ears when I hear. I mean, you have children in school coming home and say they're not able to go swimming because, there's coronavirus in the water. Things as, you're going to open your eyes because things as ridiculous as that are being peddled out there. And yes, there's a responsibility that needs to be borne by relevant agencies. Even the communication alone, there's something constant that needs to be coming out. But when it comes to then hands on deck doing something about it, they can't be tested until the thing is actually here. It's not like you can do a dummy whereby you can have a fire drill. You can't have a fire drill on this thing until it comes. You won't know how you're able to deal with it.
You don't need a fire drill. Why do people employ security guards? Because they anticipate that there's a likelihood they may be robbed, or just to beef up the security they have.
Or to give the impression that, things are safe.
Now, the impression is given by us ensuring that we have specific wards that have been set aside for managing this case. The other part is ensuring that whatever is required or what we've seen is used by those who've been handling it, have been handling, you have it in place. Now, when you have that and you're continuously educating your people correctly, that is called preparedness. It's not a ward being inaugurated. That's not the complete package. The complete package means from beginning to the end, you anticipate it will happen, you put in place things that will mitigate against the happening, and then people are informed so they know that when it happens, this is what you're supposed to do. That is preparedness. But the wait and see attitude, that's fatalism. That's like you're already giving into an eventuality that can be prevented. Remember, people do contact the virus and don't die. If you are talking about the health of a nation, And we are looking at the way this isn't business as usual. This is not charcoal and sugar from Kismayu. This is a different matter altogether. This one is lives of people being put in danger. So these games that the bureaucracy within the system likes playing, this isn't one of those games that are useful, because you are now playing chess with lives of human beings. Lives. And if you look at the people who are most likely to be affected, people with pre-existing condition, the one pre-existing condition this country has and keeps increasing is called poverty. Because that poverty lends itself to hunger, it lends itself to malnutrition, it lends itself to more diseases. If the virus was to strike in Kenya, it would be disastrous. It would be disastrous. And this isn't conspiracy theory. No. It would be disastrous. If we are prepared, we can mitigate. And let me assure you, if it were to strike 121 beds and then 11 at Kenyatta, will not do.
We will not be ready.
We will not be.
With the numbers that we've seen of infections taking place in other countries, it starts off very low, 1, 2, 3 cases here, and that could be the rationale with which people used to say, okay, even if it does come in, we're going to see a few isolated cases, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's unlikely that you're going to have a rush of 100 cases coming in at a time. So what has been put in place? Are we doubting the adequacy 100% of what has been put in place to make sure that we can at least start dealing with? Kits have been there, they've been donated. I think there's 6 in the country right now, maybe a little bit more than that. The diagnostic kits, the wards have been put in place. Apart from the communication, what they're saying is that really there's not much more that they can do apart from communicating, which I agree 100% needs to happen. Apart from that, and setting up of these beds and making sure there's adequate medicine in place, until 1 or 2 cases come in, you will never really be able to test the preparedness until it happens.
The last time people experimented with human beings, they were taken to the Nuremberg trials, because that's exactly what they're doing. And right now, with some of these statements people are making, they're experimenting with people's lives. That's what they're doing. We know, we can see it's happening. You can also ask for help and ask people who've dealt with it in great numbers, tell us what exactly
is it that you did.
They may very well even be doing it, but we don't know. That we don't have anything to do, or there's nothing to do until it hits. No, that is a false statement. It's as false as false prophets. And false prophets of doom, because all they pretend is doom, and the doom is in believing what they're saying. No, there's a lot you can do. There's always something you can do. And this thing of the government expecting to be patted on the back for doing their job, that's their job. That's what they're paid for. There's no pat on the back.
The pat on the back in this case is your salary. You'll receive. Thanks. Cheers.
Yes, and the benefits. You want a pat on the back? Build a new hospital in a month, and then we'll give you a pat on the back.
Then we'll give you a pat on the back.
Yes.
All right. Well, CT, we're coming to the end of the week, right? A lot have been spoken about. Unpack today's proverb for us as our seconds tick out.
It's really very simple. It's experience that enables you to actually fully understand. It's like what you call first-hand knowledge of a situation. We know very well that animals don't climb trees with their teeth. They use claws, they use whatever they have, they use legs. So to use this example, the teeth are an entry point. They are also the point at which, one, your mouth to some degrees guarded together with your lips, but with the teeth you are able to actually dig in, you're also able to chew. If you're able to do this, then it means the rest of your body and your taste buds can be given an opportunity to do their job, to determine whether this thing is pleasant, whether it's acceptable, and whether it isn't. And that is why we're saying only an animal who uses its teeth for climbing knows which tree is better.
So there's some tactics that you can actually employ to understand or feel the full experience.
Yes.
It's been a great week in the Situation Room. We'll come back next week and continue having a conversation around issues. CT, do say goodbye.
Let the discussions continue, and have a pleasant weekend.
Have a pleasant weekend, everybody. We close the doors on the Situation Room this week and open them again bright and early on Monday morning. Spice Soul continues until about 3 o'clock from when we shut it down today, and then Monique will drive you home and invite the adults into the room from 7 to 10 p.m. Have a fantastic